We are It's Just a Hill, a cycling club that promotes inclusion, judgment-free, with no gatekeepers. Focused on creating content from behind the handlebars to in the studio, It's Just a Hill is producing videos and podcasts to spread the message that cycling is for everyone. We are focused on reminding everyone that riding your bike can help you overcome any obstacle, because after all, it's just a hill. Hello and welcome to another episode of the It's Just a Hill Cycling Podcast. I am John Stenning, and today we are talking about the 2023 Vermont Overland. A little bit later in the episode, we will have an interview with Ansel Dickey, the race organizer of Ovrlnd. I also chat with Adam and Brian in the second segment of the podcast, and then timing didn't quite work out to get all four of us together, but Jeremy and I will be chatting towards the end of the show. For those of you that don't know about the Vermont Overland, this is a off-road gravel race, off-road gravel, whatever the hell you want to call it. It takes place in West Windsor, Vermont, which is the starting point is at Ascutney Outdoors, which is super nice. I think it's West Windsor, Vermont. That sounds about right. We went up on Friday. The race is on Saturday, and we came home on Sunday. Friday, we did a little bit of an openers ride. That was me, Jeremy, Adam, and Brian. The race day was Saturday. That's 55 miles, about 7,600 feet of climbing. And then we did a nice little recovery ride on the Sunday, went to Brownsville Butcher and Pantry for breakfast, and then headed home. It was an absolute blast. I definitely went into this event with a lot of skepticism and criticism, and sort of went into the event thinking, I'm not doing this again. The price tag is too high, and yeah, let's just say, not to spoil the interview coming ahead, I am slightly reconsidering the whole way that I thought about this thing. Yeah, it is an expensive event. One of the most expensive events that I do for the year, about $165 if you do it without camping. But you don't have to sign up for it. And I chose to sign up for it. I chose to be critical of it, and I am thinking a lot more positively about it after coming out of the weekend. And that's not because I had a good race. I actually had a pretty shit day on race day. It was a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, but I got my first flat at mile 10. I got my second flat at mile 12. I had to put a tube in my rear tire. I was thinking, there's no way in hell I'm going to finish this. Let me just pedal back to camp. But I decided to keep pushing, and then, always had the idea in the back of my mind, if my tire goes flat again, I'll just go back to camp or whatever. But I ended up riding the other 40, 45 miles, finished the ride. I did go down pretty hard around mile 40, 45 or so, coming down one of these class 4 sections. If you've never heard of class 4 roads, they are, as someone that we met at the ride last year, this is our second year doing Ovrlnd, the four of us that I mentioned before. And this guy that we met, Brian, last year, he flew to Ovrlnd from Puerto Rico. And after the ride, he goes, why do they call it pave? They should just call it fucked up road. And no truer words have ever been said about class 4 roads. Basically, they're like old cow farming roads that the town doesn't maintain anymore. Some of the landowners on the roads maintain the roads, but they are just they're hiking trails. They're mountain bike trails. They're not necessarily the best trails for a hardtail, drop bar, gravel bike. And you still ride them anyway, and they're a blast. But going down one of them, pretty gnarly section, I think it just got caught in the mud just right, went over to the side, the right-hand side of the road, sort of went over my bars, got something pretty good in my ribs. I don't think it was my bike. It was probably just the earth that I fell into. Got this weird, not road rash, but dirt rash here on my arm, and bent my handlebars out of place. Had to put my front wheel in between my legs and straighten the bars out. And at some point, I think it was probably before that, I also lost my GoPro. So maybe a mile or so after I went down, I looked down to start my GoPro again, and it was totally gone. It seems like the screw had backed itself out. Maybe I just didn't tighten it enough because the mount itself was still there, but the GoPro was gone, and I was like, fuck, this sucks. But sort of persevered anyway. I wasn't about to turn around and try to find the GoPro because I was already sort of at my wit's end. And my physical end point, I was fucking done for the day. And even though I didn't put in a 4-hour race effort like I thought I was going to, I ended up finishing in 5 hours instead. Lost about 20 minutes doing the 2 flats, and lost another 10, 15 minutes, just like pedaling a lot slower or whatever than I thought. So last year's route was a little bit different. I did it in 4 hours and 19 minutes. This route was quote unquote harder. It was a little bit shorter, but definitely gnarlier. And with all like the water and rain and stuff that Vermont has gotten in the past few months, made those class 4 sections that much gnarlier. But long story short, I finished. The look on my friends' faces when I pulled up to camp was that of elation. They seemed like maybe they were worried that I was coming in so much later than them. We'll hear from them a little bit later on their race experiences. And not to bury the lead, is that the right term? Bury the lead? But I did get my GoPro back. One of the lovely volunteers handed it over to Ansel afterwards, and Ansel was kind enough to drive to Brian's mom's house and drop it off. And so the GoPro is back. There will be a video that Brian is currently editing, and that will be out hopefully in the next couple weeks or so. So thank you all for tuning in to this episode. I don't know why I'm talking like it's the end of the episode, because it's not. But we're going to head over into my interview with Ansel Dickey, race organizer for Vermont Overland. Welcome to the podcast, Vermont Overland race director, Ansel Dickey. Ansel, thank you for joining me today. First of all, I would like to start this chat by publicly apologizing for being maybe a bit of an ass on social media to you and to Overland.
No, dude,
I sometimes let that part of me get the best of me, and I could have gone about it in a much better way. So I am sorry, and thank you for taking the time to be understanding and chat with me on Instagram before doing this, and then coming on the podcast to talk. That's very nice of you, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, no worries. Thanks for having me, and that means a lot. Although I don't think it's fully necessary, because I've been actively trying to get people to use the hashtag cancel Ansel thing after last year's race.
The
funny backstory to that, if you want to get into that.
Yeah, please.
But yeah, and then I also can't blame you or blame others if they had a bad experience last year, because we had a lot of things go wrong that were aside from the obvious like tragedy, which is awful. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that compounded that were kind of out of our control, and then like got worse at the aid stations, and like yeah, we just made it a goal to do better this year. Oh my God, it's texting me. And as of right now, it feels like we hit that mark. But the cancel Ansel thing, hosting events is crazy. Our event goes to 6 different towns. We have to get permission to put the event on in all of these towns. We talk to the select boards. Every town has a different policy. Whether they require a permit or not, or if it's just like a handshake, or if it's a phone call, like it's all over the map in Vermont.
Right.
And we got permission to send the race through South Woodstock, which is really Woodstock last year. And then most of the towns, they require us to like put out these signs that say like cycling event this weekend, which is like totally needed, because you can't really over communicate an event happening. But even that, and like posting on Front Porch Forum and making these announcements, like still like it falls through the cracks and people don't know. And so we went out and we put all these like cycling event this weekend signs on the roads, like everywhere on course, but also in Woodstock. Cancel Ansel thing popped up. So about a day before the event, I get this phone call from a random number, and of course I'm I'm like, hello, this is Ansel. And immediately I'm like, whoa, like this like angry old dude is just screaming at me in the phone. And I'm like, oh boy, I bet it's a landowner. So I like try to calm him down, do whatever. And I find out that he lives on, oh man, the stretch of the class 4 is.
Is this where the sign was? The sign that everyone saw last year that said "Cancel Ansel," and maybe people were firing guns in that property as well. I believe last year.
So I mean, long story short, I forget the name of the road, but it's a class 4 road, and at a lot of these class 4 roads, you have landowners that live on like the town road, or they had bought property that used to be off of the class 4 road and then got permission from the town to like improve that road so that they can get to their house. But that road and the part of the road that they improved, that the town doesn't maintain, is still like a legal right of way, legal throughway. And we had never used this class 4 before in any course over the 9 years it was last year. And lo and behold, this dude is like a really, really angry person who lives in the woods. And he doesn't like cyclists, but he also kind of had like a weird, quirky, creative side to him. So basically, like, he threatens in email and leaving voice messages like, you're not allowed to send the event through here. It's my road. If you send, like, I won't say what he said, like, your homosexual cyclists up the roads, wearing tight clothing, me and my buddies are going to host like a skeet shooting party, and we can't guarantee that cyclists don't get shot, basically. Something to that extent. So it's basically like a gun threat, threatening that he's going to shoot over 1,000 riders going on what he thinks is his road, but it's not. So we hire police for the event. I talked to the police officer in Windsor. I'm like, what should I do? And she's like, talk to the police chief in Woodstock and just hire a detail. So we hired a detail to just like patrol that area, maybe park in front of his house, maybe not. And like, they know the guy because he's had problems in the past. So I'm on the lead moto, and I tell my moto driver, I'm like, okay, we're kind of approaching this house. Like, we got this gun threat. And my moto guy is insane. He's like, oh my God, if he pulls a gun on me, we're going to hit him. I'm like, no, don't do that. We're not. And I didn't see the sign, but like, because I'm photographing, I've got the radio, I've got a million things going on. And we go up the Crossroad Road. He wasn't there, but I did see his like American flag car parked in the driveway. I was like, wow, that's subtle. And then we pass, and my motor driver was like, cancel Ansel. That's hilarious. And then like, subsequently 1,500 cyclists pass that house and see that sign, and it's hilarious. So then I was like, oh man, I should just get stickers or something made, because if I cancel myself, no one else can cancel me.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. It's like Eminem in 8 Mile. If you just make fun of yourself and you own it yourself, you know, you're gonna, I think that's probably the best way of dealing with someone like that, right? I mean, because maybe trying to have a relatively calm conversation with someone that's so fired up like that doesn't always necessarily go well. So yeah, I mean, you embraced it, which is great. And cancel Ansel. Well, let's cancel you by the end of the episode. What do you think? Yeah, we can do that.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I very quickly realized that like it wasn't worth trying to talk to that guy. And it's interesting, like, part of the struggles of promoting an event, and I think this is why a lot of events unfortunately go away, is that like you get different reactions from landowners all across the economic spectrum. Like, we have this guy, and then on the very other end, in the same like 5-mile radius of the course, we had like very aristocratic, wealthy horse owners who were like threatening to sue us. And it's like, that wasn't even on a class 4 road. That was just because like they had a horse farm and they didn't want cyclists riding by their house.
Just by their house, right?
By their house on a road. So after all of that trouble, and then compound that with the tragedy that happened, I proactively decided I am not sending the race through Woodstock this year. They're not welcoming. And it's actually the town that the race started in. The very first year, 10 years ago, it started in downtown Woodstock and finished in downtown Woodstock. And it was actually really cool. But case in point, again, the old promoter, Peter Vollers, got a ton of complaints there. And then he eventually moved the race to a ski area called Suicide 6, now called Saskadena 6. And it was there for a couple of years. And then it moved to his house in Reading when he moved to Reading. And now it's Scutney Outdoors. But long story short, we haven't had a host venue town like West Windsor that's been this supportive in the history of the event.
Yeah, I mean, Ascutney's awesome. Brownsville Butcher and Pantry, awesome. I mean, they like absolutely killed it. And so, was last year the first year at Ascutney's? Last year was the first year I did it. Was it at Ascutney Outdoors beforehand too?
So I've this was the third year that I've been running it solo.
Gotcha.
After taking it over from Peter Vollers, who started it and started the
Yeah.
company behind it.
Yeah.
And this is the third year it's at Ascutney Outdoors, although we had done like other smaller events and community events at Ascutney Outdoors. But Ascutney Outdoors has become like the dream host venue for a gravel event or any other larger cycling event in Vermont. Just with the layout, with the parking, with the views, and like the support, it's actually pretty phenomenal. And I think I've chatted with other promoters who have attended the event or been to Ascutney Outdoors, and they're like, "Whoa, this is like pretty special," because it's not always like this.
No, it's not. And I think that's one of the things. I think there are a lot of things that Ovrlnd does really well. Like the social media presence of Ovrlnd is awesome. You do such a great job with that. Like just like the general vibe that it puts off seems a lot more. I don't know. I don't want to say just like appealing to people like of our generation, but as someone that does a lot of other gravel and racing events, there's just like a lot of like, older, middle-aged, like white men, and like things are like just like very simple. And I've done other great events in the area, whether it be like Farmer's Daughter or like, I'm wanting to do like D2R2 next year. But Ovrlnd does stand out amongst the rest because of the social media push, I think. And that I'm sure has a lot to do with you, right? And a lot to do with the other company that you're involved with, Vermont Social, right? You're also the owner operator of that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Although, fun fact, everyone was asking like why we were wearing, or some people were wearing these like Ovrlnd hats.
Yep.
I'm in the process of changing the name of Vermont Social to Ovrlnd.Studio, but Ovrlnd spelled without the vowels, and studio instead of social, because when we started, we did a ton of social media work, hence, and Vermont Overland was one of our very first clients. And we kind of like took that and like went with it. But in that process, we have like done much less social media and way more like production. So we're really just like we're a creative studio production company. We make films and take photos and tell stories about people in the outdoor space. And if people are listening to this and the audio changes, because I just put on headphones because I realized that the echo between the computer and the Zoom was going to be terrible on my
thank you for doing audio.
Yeah, no worries.
So let's take a little bit of a step back before we get more into Ovrlnd, and like before we like come down from the high of this weekend. Like, could you tell me a little bit about yourself? I read online that you grew up in Cape Cod. Have you always been into like outdoor activities, adventure type of activities? Like before, growing up, were you into cycling? I read that you also like to enjoy fishing, and I know that you do a lot of trail running as well.
Yeah, thanks. I grew up on Cape Cod. I think I grew up in a pretty athletic family, but never like, given the events that I'm around now, we were never around those kind of events. We just like enjoyed mountain biking and like hiking and like cycling. Like maybe some of the first cycling events I ever did was like this charity ride called the Prouty in Lyme, New Hampshire. It raises money for cancer research. So I grew up on Cape Cod. My grandparents live in Lyme, New Hampshire. I eventually went to middle school at Cardigan Mountain School, which is an all-boys school in Canaan, New Hampshire. And I kind of like fell into ski racing after growing up and learning how to ski with my grandparents in New Hampshire. Kind of enjoyed the ski racing thing. Didn't really enjoy school that much because I'm pretty dyslexic, and just traditional school was always hard for me. And then when I graduated from Cardigan, I was like looking at kind of like the high schools I wanted to go to. I know I didn't really want to spend much time on Cape Cod because the public high schools are pretty brutal. And I applied to Killington Mountain School in Vermont, as a skier and got accepted. And at that time, they were like still super small, just like ski program in Vermont. And I thought I wanted to be a professional skier. So I pursued that and was still kind of like jerking off in high school, like not really doing anything. And I actually ended up getting kicked out of Killington Mountain School for smoking weed.
Nice.
And that was a pretty big wake up call because I had to go back to Cape Cod and go to like this, like, lack of a better term, just shitty public high school on Cape Cod with like a ton of people instead of, you know, a small tight knit community.
Yeah.
And right around that same time that happened, I got this call from this guy named Peter Vollers, who was starting a cycling program at Killington Mountain School. And he was like a real estate lawyer who lived in Woodstock, Vermont. He was a professional cyclist for a long time when he was younger. And he was just trying to like, he was starting this junior cycling team because he had a passion for it and he wanted to like give back. And he wanted to partner with Killington Mountain School because like when they all do these like dryland training in the spring or fall when it's not ski season and there's no snow. So he was like, oh, I bet a ton of the like really athletic young kids who have been skiing all winter might want to cycle in the springtime and maybe the summer and join my team. And I had kind of dabbled in that team like the year prior, so he knew who I was. But at that low moment, he called me. He's like, dude, I don't care that you got kicked out of school. I want you to be on the cycling team. Like, start training. Here's the race schedule. Here's what we're doing. And I was like, let's go. So I started doing that. And I really hadn't trained much. And like, as a ski racer, I would never really crack the top like 15 or 20 spots. I just wasn't that good at it. And I won the like first 3 high school races I entered cycling. So I was like, oh, okay.
That's a good feeling.
It feels nice to like be good at something and get like a positive reinforcement loop of like you put in the work and then like it pays off, and then that happens over and over again. And I hadn't really experienced that yet. So we did that, and I reapplied to Killington Mountain School as a junior in high school with the idea of, hey, I just want to use your like schooling program to pursue cycling, but I want to be a day student instead of a dorm student, live in Woodstock, rent a room from Peter Vollers, who is the coach, and just cycle. And that was like the first all like full-time cycling kind of program that Killington Mountain School had. And I was kind of like their only cyclist, but they're like, yeah, I guess that works. You can like just come to school here, pay the tuition, and then be coached by Peter and be a day student and like do your races. Because the real benefit of a program like Killington Mountain School or Burke Mountain Academy or GMVS or something like that is the fact that they tailor the academics around like your athletic schedule.
Oh, nice.
And that's the real draw for like younger athletes if they're like really trying to pursue something. So I did that. They accepted me back. I raced junior year of high school, senior year of high school, made the U.S. national team as a junior, and then right out of high school signed with California Giant Berry Farms, which at that time was sponsored by Specialized. So then, like, this is all like very compressed storytelling. But moved to California, did a ton of racing. Like, years went on, swapped different teams, and did a ton of racing in Europe, did a ton of racing in Asia professionally, and then like was kind of like, whoa, this is a pretty hard lifestyle for like not that much reward. I had a teammate who was a really talented portrait photographer, and I was like kind of interested. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, you're taking these beautiful photos, and we were traveling all these crazy places. So I kind of got into photography. And at that time, I know I didn't really want to be a coach per se, because like a lot of people like would coach people online to have extra income on the side. And I think that's totally valid, but I just wasn't that interested in it. Um, so I had this idea in my head. I was like, oh man, I'm like pretty interested in this social media stuff. Like if I can just like get a couple social media clients on the side while I'm racing, I'll be able to do my races. Maybe I can like do the races I want to do instead of like what my team wants to do. Um, so then that kind of evolved, and that's the start of Vermont Social. And then Vermont Social just started growing to a point where it was like, I'm enjoying this more than racing, and two, like I'm making more money than I am racing, so I should probably just go all in on this
Yeah.
And I made that call to like stop racing when I was 23 or 4. And kind of felt like I was abandoning a lot of my teammates, but it was like the single best decision I ever made.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Were you living in Vermont full time? Like, did you have like residence in Vermont at that point, even though you were traveling a lot for cycling?
Yeah, like Vermont was the home base.
Yeah.
And throughout this whole process, I was dating. Well, by the time we moved to California, I was dating Gertrude, my now wife.
Yeah.
And then when we got back from California, we were using Woodstock, Vermont as a home base.
Cool.
But I was traveling so much that like nothing really felt like home. Um, but it was still like a really nice place to be. And then we would like drive out to California for the winters and stuff like that for training. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, time goes quick.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's like quite the tale of, I mean, you're a relatively young man. That's a lot of things to go through, and like you're finding yourselves. And I mean, even just think of going from like being kicked out of school for smoking weed to like almost being this like independent trailblazer that's gonna like live with the coach and like be a day player at the school. And I mean, that seems like a big jump from being kicked out of the school to then like sort of taking matters into your own hands, and then, you know, growing it into this business that's now continuing to evolve, and it involves Ovrlnd itself and involves like the promoting of it, and like, you're about to go and fly overseas and shoot a commercial or shoot a documentary, right? Like, and that seems awesome. It seems like you're, I'm sure there are highs and lows, but it seems like you're living the dream.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's fun. It's fun to tell that story because it's a good reminder that it is a good gig, but it definitely hasn't come without like
Yeah,
some
hardship for sure.
terrifying decisions too. Like, I don't know, like for maybe from the period of like when I was 19 until like 2 or 3 years ago, I was terrified of cocktail parties or any sort of party with like an older adult because like they'd be like, "Oh, where did you go to school?" And I would have to explain to them that I didn't go to college.
Yeah.
And then like they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're a failure." And I'm
Right.
like, I'm just now like getting to the point where I'm like comfortable with myself and my decisions, because I'm seeing the results.
Right.
But yeah, we'll see if they can keep it up. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, so like let's talk about Ovrlnd. I think it, I was overly critical of it. I think this year was a huge improvement. I think maybe one of
Yeah,
the biggest improvements was like bringing less 500 less people to the event, right? And I think
100%.
the trickle down of that alone, the rest stops being like super well stocked. I mean, as someone that did double flat 10 miles into the ride, I wasn't at those rest stops as early as I had
Yeah,
hoped, or as early as I was the first year. And there was
right.
still was tons of stuff there. The lines to get food afterwards were so much more manageable. I mean, you're going to wait in line for food anyway with like 1,000 people around, but was
Right.
was that an easy decision for you to make? Was that a hard decision to cap it at 1,000 riders instead of 1,500? I mean, there's obviously a lot more that we can talk about coming out of the 2022 Ovrlnd, and deciding to do one in 2023. But like, what was that decision like? Saying, "Hey, we're gonna do 1,000
Yeah,
people instead of 1,500."
totally. Well, like off the bat, no, not an easy decision. And
Yeah,
then there were like a lot of factors that kind of played into that. And
yeah,
like from your side and like any participant's side point of view, whatever you want to call it, it definitely came down to just rider experience. Like
yeah,
we majorly fucked up at key aid stations. And part of those mess ups were on us, and then a lot of it was out of our control, based on like either our organization of volunteers or our communication with volunteers and like what needs to be done. And then like certain issues start compounding. And then you combine that with maybe slightly too many riders.
Yeah.
Definitely too many riders for that team, but maybe too many riders all at once for that size of an aid station. And like people have to wait in line and it sucks. And you pay all this money and you hope to have a good experience, especially if you're in the back.
Right.
And then this is also on us, but like some of the people at the front of the race like get there first, and it's like this beautiful aid station and no one's there, and they just like stuff their pockets full of stuff, and we're like, wait, we accounted for like everyone to have maybe like 2 untaps instead of like 9.
A handful, and a full pocket. Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is gonna be nice next week when I have to train for so there's that side. From like the participatory side, we just wanted to improve rider experience, and I thought the easiest way to do that is just make it a smaller event, which I think played true, but that makes it really, really hard on the budget. Especially when like we try really hard to make this like a charitable thing. Like we're not a 501c3 nonprofit, but like we want the event to benefit charities that like directly impact the communities and like that the course goes through. Because at the end of the day, like the towns that host this event or any event take the burden of that event. Yes, they're getting economic stimulus, but like in the moment, those landowners don't see it. But maybe they'll be willing to kind of like put up with the inconvenience of it if they know it's supporting the food shelf or something like Scutney Outdoors or WAMBA, which is like Woodstock's Mountain Bike Association. And then the other side of that after the tragedy, and especially after getting a lot of like kind of quite frankly nasty, heartless complaints from people, particularly in South Woodstock, like writing letters to the editor of the Vermont Standard, like the Overland is poorly organized, it's dangerous, XYZ, whatever. I felt like I needed to kind of provide something to the towns to say, hey, we're taking X, Y, and Z extra safety precautions, even though what happened is a complete freak anomaly. We still do not know how it happened. It just doesn't make sense. And it's like a true tragedy. Like we felt like we had to provide something to these towns to say, hey, like we're downsizing the event a bit. We're doing these other things. We're redesigning the course to try and make it better and safer for everyone involved. And those are the two kind of big factors that led into that decision. And then like coming off the weekend, I think it was a good call. But like it definitely limits the budget. Like it's tough on the budget to do that.
Yeah, that's 33% of the amount of people. Like that's a lot. That's a big hit. And I mean, we don't have to like go over all the numbers here or anything, but you're talking about like Scutney Outdoors and the catering from Brownsville and all of that's involved. And like, you're not going to be doing it for free. You're not doing this for free. No one like does it. Like you got to make your time worth it too. I mean, that's the country that we live in with consumerism and capitalism, right? So, you talk about like redesigning the course a little bit, which I'm sure was because you thought like it'd be safer, but then there's also this huge 100-year flood in Vermont, right? Like all of this rain a month and a half ago, like how much did that must have affected it a lot too. And I can imagine that was quite the scramble. Like I was planning a bike packing trip in like early August and we were like, what are we going to do? Like, can we do the growler, the gravel growler, if you're familiar with it? Are we going to be able to do that again this year? We've done it 2 years in a row already. Or are half these trails going to be washed out? Like, that's, and so you're putting, and that's just me and like 4 of my buddies, right? You're putting on an event for 1,000 people. And this is something that like, I know a lot of people wait in front of their computers on January 1st to sign up for Ovrlnd. I was one of them 2 years in a row, so that's a lot of anticipation and I'm sure a lot of pressure. What was that like?
Um, the flood, I don't know. It's just been like the most insanely wet summer in Vermont.
Yeah,
Like there was no one big, like some people might be familiar with like Hurricane Irene, which
sure.
kind of came through and like first time in a really, really long time, like flooded a lot of New England, and any major waterway, especially ones with like steep banks, got like really destroyed, like catastrophic flooding. Um, and they called that a 1 in 100 year flood.
Right.
And then this summer, it was just like raining all the time, like really, really, really wet summer. And then all of a sudden, like you wouldn't think anything of it because you just looked at the forecast. You're like, oh, great, it's going to rain again today. But instead of like raining half an inch, it rained like 3 inches or more, like a couple days in a row.
Yeah.
And flooding in certain areas were like way worse than Hurricane Irene, partially because the water table was already so high
Right. From
from
all the rain. Yeah.
all the rain. Um, and then that was like that happened, and then like another week later that happened again, and then
Yeah.
another week later that happened again, and it was like 3 or 4 weeks of like repeated flooding in Vermont,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's not one spot to go kind of like see how bad it all was because it happened over such a long period of time, but like
Hmm.
it was really bad.
Yeah.
And the water table is still super, super high. Like we were nervous about parking this year because we have these like backup fields that we park people
Oh,
in
right. Right.
that like if it's too wet, we can't really use. So that was a factor. But luckily, the other than Rich Trail and some of the other class four roads just generally being like a little more washed out and a little more rougher, those roads like they're like that year round. That's the way they are. They're unmaintained roads.
Right.
And then the gravel roads were like pretty well maintained. They get graded, they get fixed, and they're good to go. And because I was already planning to kind of redesign the course to avoid South Woodstock,
Hmm.
because of what we've talked about already, it was relatively easy for me to like avoid the roads that I knew had a bridge out or had
Yeah.
a major washout. And the only change I had to make last minute, which was okay because I still hadn't really released the course yet to the riders, was avoiding like the lower section of Best Road because I got word from Heartland that they're like, I don't know if like I send them all the information, I send them the course, I send them all the stuff, and they're like, I don't know if Best Road's going to be open by then. I'm like, okay, like can't risk it. Let's just avoid it. Um, and then I was actually telling your buddy Brian this when I dropped off the GoPro. I was
Yeah.
like, and then I came by the best road on the moto, and the road closed sign was gone. And I'm like,
Wow.
I didn't put a cue there in the routed GPS file. So I'm like, oh no, so many riders are gonna miss this turn now because it's a
Yeah.
road that had been closed for 2 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of factors, but um overall I think like the class fours were like a lot, maybe 20% rougher than normal. And
Rich
then
Trail was wild. Absolutely wild. I mean,
I wanted to see somebody ride that so badly.
it was just,
Yeah.
I mean, it like, and at the point too, when you're in the middle of the race, you're with a big group of people, you're sort of, you can't ride it because people in front of you are walking anyway. You know, it was sort of that point when I was there. It was sort of that point of the race, at least. But it would have been wild to see someone because even last year, I mean, that's a tricky road, right? I mean, I think no matter what, that's a tricky road. And I did see a video of someone previewing the course with someone else, and were you just riding a road bike with like 32s on it or something?
I have been known for underbiking.
It made me feel good about my decision to run a 35 in the back. But then that's also the tire I got the flat on. So who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
mean,
know. I think if it didn't rain on Friday,
yeah,
it would have been slightly easier. But that said, like last year before the flooding, like if you're a good bike handler and you're willing to like put in the extra effort to
yeah,
ride Rich Trail, you can. Whether that's like a good race tactic or not is up to you, because you're probably just burning a bunch of matches, like trying to ride this one section super hard. But it was cool. Like, it's cool to like be able to ride it. This year it was like you had to be either on a hardtail or a mountain bike, super fit, and like an insane bike handler to ride it. So hopefully it gets improved. We didn't have time prior to the event, but it would be pretty easy to improve that to the point, improve the trail to the point where it's like pretty rideable. But then again, part of the legacy of these like class 4 roads is that they are unmaintained.
Yeah.
They just like evolve and change over time. So that's become a cool, iconic part of the course. I'd be interested to know what was your favorite part of the course?
I honestly think my favorite part is Tarbell Hill.
Oh, why? I'm interested.
So maybe it doesn't come as a surprise with the name of the club being It's Just a Hill, but I do absolutely love to climb. And you don't get stuff like that. I live in Rhode Island, right? So you don't get stuff like that around here. Not 5-mile climbs at all.
Yeah.
And also I think it really stands out to me from this year, because that was right after I had that catastrophic double flat, right? And so that was like the lowest point of my race, right? I got the first flat, I plugged it, I inflated the tire, then I got like less than a mile down the road, double flatted, had to take it off. My pump wasn't working. I put the tube in. And so I'm like, okay, I had help from a couple other people who were like, you need something, they were stopped or whatever. I walked my bike 500 yards down the road to like meet up with these other people that were on the side of the road. And then I cross over 106 and I start climbing up Tarbell Hill. And this was like 5 minutes after I was like, I'm done. Like, I kind of know where I am. I can just route back to start. This is not like the day I was planning to have. And so I was like lowest of lows, right? So I convinced myself to keep riding. I crossed over 106. I've been up Tarbell before. It's right near where Brian, who we mentioned before, his mom lives right in that area. So we've talked about it. And I, not to like, I'm really patting myself on the back here, but like I started passing people going up that hill, and that felt good. That was actually like a good, like redeeming moment where I was like, okay, I'm spinning, I'm climbing, this feels good. And I do like to have that little, I do like to challenge myself. I like to sit and I like to spin. And so I would say that, and then there was also this one point towards the end of the ride. I think it was I did see you at one of the corners. You were at a corner probably around mile, I don't know, I want to say 45 or 48 or so. This was about
late in the race.
Yeah, late in the race, maybe about 4 hours in. So maybe about 2 p.m. or so. It was kind of a tight corner. You were standing there. There were all the signs encouraging people to like slow down, right? Don't be racing down hills. And right after that, not long after that, there was this big, beautiful vista. And the last year when I did Ovrlnd, it was like race pace the whole time, like I'm racing. Because I double flatted, my mindset was like very different. It was like just finish. And so I got to take in the views and the scenery of Vermont a lot more. And, like last year when I was just like averaging 165 BPM the whole time, you're not taking it in. You're just like, go, go, go. So I would say those two, the Tarbell Hill, because it's just here, and just like the beautiful scenery that is Vermont. I mean, like, I think that's why people come and do a ride like that aren't even interested in top 100 or top 500 or whatever, right? It's because they're getting to experience this quintessential New England, like I'm talking covered bridges, the best gravel roads around, and just like mountains and like horse farms, and just absolutely beautiful. So you spend, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 minutes just like deep in the woods on some of these class 4 roads, and then you pop out and you're like, whoa, that's where I am. Absolutely. Yeah. It's beautiful. So cool. It really is.
Yeah. We had fun. One of my favorite things is like after the race finishes, I have no idea like where my attention or time is going to be called, but like we were called that intersection because another course marshal had to like leave. So I was like, okay, like me and the other moto guys will go back out and just hang at that intersection. So we got there, and like every year, one of my favorite things to do is just like see and cheer on and encourage the people at the back because it is just so funny and fun to watch and like be a part of. We had this one dude, like, we're like, slow down, slow down, slow down. And he was absolutely hauling down the hill.
Yeah.
And I thought he was just gonna like take the turn like everybody else, but instead he just like skids, brakes, and stops. And he's got this like Hawaiian flannel, like floral shirt on.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Do you guys have beer?" And of course, my like insane moto driver, Dylan McNicholas, who used to actually race cyclocross and was a good cyclocrosser back in the day.
Oh, cool.
He's like, "Yeah, I've got beer." And he's like, brings out a Coors Light, and like this dude just like chugs the Coors Light and then goes on his way.
Awesome.
And like, Dylan was like, "Oh, he's gonna be feeling that on this next hill. Like, I guarantee it."
Yeah. Stories like that make me actually believe in the spirit of gravel. I think the spirit of gravel is go ahead.
I have a question for you, because I only just found it out today. We had a volunteer drop off like the remaining signs that were out on course, and like he rode like sweep for the first 20 miles or so.
Yep.
So that means he hit the first 3 class 4s before aid station 1, and then he kind of bailed.
Yep.
And he's like, yeah, we like at the entrance to the 3rd class, which is Town Farm Road.
Yeah.
He's like, I got there, and there was just like this giant like bar set out with like a bunch of high noons and beer. And then I called my other logistics guy, Ben Bardwell. I was like, "Dude, did you hear about this? Apparently there was like a beer stop at Town Farm Road." And that was unplanned, had no idea who it was, don't know who the landowner is, but apparently they just like set up a table with like a bunch of beer and like cornhole for the riders.
Yes.
And it was like did this happen? Did you experience that? Or
No, I did experience it. And it was like, because I also experienced something very similar last year where some guy was just like handing out Budweisers at one point. It was sort of like towards the second half of the race, but this seemed like an upped version of that where, there was cornhole. Like they wanted people to stop and party mid-race. And actually, I talked to a dude that was like camped out near us, because like we camped out at a Scudding Outdoors. And he's like, yeah, these dudes were like partying. And I stopped and I grabbed a beer, and he's like, it was not a good idea. Like, I can't imagine, especially at that moment, like doing it maybe with 5 miles left. Maybe you're thinking, okay, it's not going to quite hit me until I finish or whatever. Although that finish, we can talk about the finish in a little bit. The finish is wild. It is like a cyclocross finish going up that like that final. It's just absolutely wild. I can't imagine. I myself do not drink. I do like to smoke weed. I can't imagine doing anything like that, like at that moment in a race. You know what I mean? It's just like so. But to me, that's like what makes an event like that fun. You know, like not to just like talk shit about dudes that only ride on the road, but like roadies can have such a stick up their ass, and people that ride gravel or ride off road, I think. It makes me believe in the spirit of gravel. It makes me think that like, okay, we're out here to have fun. It's not just about like standing on top of a podium. I mean, and I think that like Kyle Murphy, right? Is that his name? Who won first place this year?
Yep.
That guy fucking rules. That guy, he was fucking camping out, hanging out afterwards with his cool ass sunglasses on. That guy fucking rules.
He was literally like, he watched the last finisher come in, and he had his kid. And then he like made a s'more by the fire, and he's like, "Okay, do you want to go?" Like he like asked his son, he's like, "You want to go back to the tent now? Let's log roll down the hill." And they just log rolled down the hill. Back to amazing. The tent.
That final. So I was at the finish line when those last like few people came across the line, and that too, I think was amazing. You know, like there was that one 11-year-old kid who came in at just about 8 hours. Yep.
So crazy.
Absolute monster. And then a couple people came in after Wyatt, right? And like just like the champagne toast, sprayed him down with champagne. Everyone's fist bumping this dude. And to me, that makes everything worth it. And I wonder how you feel about that, because I saw the smile on your face when that was happening, and it looked like an amazing moment, like between Wyatt and everyone finishing, like, because it's one thing to be on your bike for 4.5 hours. I mean, what did Kyle do it in? what, 3.5?
3:10, 3:15, something like that. Yeah.
But to be out there for 8 hours and to continue pushing, I talk about my low moment at like mile 12 being like, I'm out of here, to ride those roads, to be an 11-year-old kid, that makes it all worth it. That 11-year-old kid finished and like everyone's cheering for him, spraying him down with Topo Chico. It ruled. It absolutely ruled, dude. And I like kudos to you guys for that. Yeah.
It gives me shivers like talking about it. I swear.
Same. It brought a tear to my eye.
That was
it honestly did. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the first year that I think the event has kind of like taken on something like that, where it's become something a little bigger than just what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know like how to say that. Where it's kind of become this thing like, for Kyle and for Ian or for Sarah, or for Maud, like, like, yes, it's a super technical race. It's like high intensity. They finish it. They're fucked. They're tired, but it's not like they were not out there all day, and they're not like, they can still walk, like,
right.
But like for some of these people who are a little bit more average and more normal, like 55-ish miles on this kind of course in Vermont has become something that's just like an incredible accomplishment to complete.
Agreed.
And like that's arguably one of the things that I'm like most pumped up about. I was like, oh, and I had never like thought about it in that way because I come from like a bike racing background.
Sure.
Like you like show up and you take your goo on the start line and you race, and then you put your feet up on the couch afterwards. Like,
right.
And yeah, it was just like so cool to witness that. And it's the first time that I felt like the event has had that kind of like vibe and camaraderie to like cheer others on that are going through that, or kind of like overcoming that struggle and completing it, because they complete it and they're like exhausted, but they also have this smile on their face that's like, whoa. It was cool, man. I don't know.
It was really cool.
Another thing that kind of came to my mind when you were talking about just events in general is like, once you get that many people together in any kind of like circumstance or area or event, like I think it becomes its own thing. It almost becomes its own organism. Whereas like one of my favorite parts of these events is like hearing the stories of other people's experiences, because like I didn't even know that there was like a quote unquote beer stop at complete. I didn't even know that lander. Don't know who they are. Like I'm gonna try and find out who they are and thank them and like ask if we can do it again. It's awesome. And then like just other stories out on course, like one of our volunteers who was like a friend who was staying at my house, like a long time friend, like somehow was asked to like drive a sheriff's car back to their house because like and he's like, dude, I was just like asked to like drive this cop car back to their house, and then I got picked up by another volunteer, and then I was brought back to the venue. I'm like, how is all of this happening all at once? Meanwhile, I'm like on the moto radioing like all of the things and the communication and the people going in different directions all at the same time is like insane. And it's really wild to experience and be a part of. And then also see people who you like give roles to or like entrust certain tasks with, and they just like take it in stride. And like sometimes it's hard to like give up that control and like be like, can you like do this for me, or ask for help? And then you just like trust people to do something, and they come through. It's pretty nuts. So yeah, those are all my feelings post event, and what makes me want to like continue to do it, because like my day job is the production company. Like this is very like the month before the bike race, like I scramble to make it happen, and then the rest of the year it's just like, oh great, like all right, got to figure out like update the website, update bike reg, and get like some communications out. So I don't know. It's like, it's just a cool thing.
It's a super cool thing. And I mean, everyone did. You did such a great job. And I think, going into it, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this again. you know, especially because I was concerned about like the price point and everything. But like,
No, you were
I
gonna,
mean,
dude. You were gonna do a cancel Ansel post. I swear, you
I
should
I,
have.
I would have. I turned to Brian at the start line when you were walking up to start talking. I turned to Brian and I go, Brian, is
Were you
now
on
a good time?
were you
Yeah,
on the front line or were you like second
I
row?
was. I was like second or third row. Yeah.
Nice,
And
sick.
I was like, Brian, is now a good time to start a cancel Ansel chant? And he looked at me like, you fucking better not, you know? But that I have a total opposite attitude towards it now. Like I mean, you sort of alluded to it earlier. I lost the GoPro somewhere. I like who found you? It's been
Dude,
found. It's
another
been given to Brian. I can't even believe that it's been
another
found. Yeah.
another story from like an event that's like weird, crazy, and serendipitous. It's like I don't even. It's so much chaos at the finish line. Like someone handed me that GoPro, and I think it was one of our support drivers who's like, "Yeah, someone lost a GoPro on course." I'm like, "Okay, great, add it to lost and found." We're cleaning up the Scutney Outdoors yesterday. I'm like, most of the lost and found is like disgusting empty bottles and socks. So I'm like, that stuff's getting thrown out. I'm sorry, I'll buy you a new bottle.
Yeah.
You really are attached to your disgusting bottle. And then this GoPro and like a cracked cell phone. Yeah. And so like GoPro goes in my car. I go down to the Brownsville Butcher and Pantry, and first time all weekend where I just like get to sit and like eat something, and I'm like doing emails or being on my phone. And then I was checking who like tags us like on social in, and it's a very dyslexic way of saying that. And I saw your stories like lost my GoPro, and I'm like, no fucking way. And I was like,
amazing,
dude, we've got a GoPro.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had to go back out on course anyway to pick up some signs. So, and Brian's, I think it's his mom's house or something.
Correct.
Was like right on the way. So I just dropped it off with him. And, yeah, like that's the cool thing about these events is just like a lot of people work together to like make shit happen. And then the shit happens. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, you could sit around a fire for hours and trade stories of just what happened in 24 hours or what happened in 8 hours of a race day. Right. I mean, because it's just that perfect confluence of events of everyone, like you're meeting new people, you're riding with different people that you've never met. You know, you have this plan going in, like we were like, we're all going to ride together. Well, guess what? We didn't, you know, and like I get to ride with other people and meet other people. And so I have just one last thing I'd like to chat about before we get out of here.
Yeah, totally.
So I saw a post on Instagram. You mentioned him earlier, Ian Boswell. He put up this picture, right? And the caption of the picture were Unbound is long, Gravel Locos is fast, Steamboat is fun, but the Vermont Overland is relentless. And so like it must feel great to be compared to those events, right? And like do you anticipate like Ovrlnd was quote unquote like harder this year, right? It wasn't necessarily your plan to make it harder, but the way things all shook out, like, do you plan on continuing it to make it harder? Like, do you like that it's relentless? Are you not even thinking about next year at this moment, just because, you know, it was just a couple days ago now?
Yeah, totally. I mean, Ian's a really good friend. And I think both of us have the mentality that like East Coast events in general, especially maybe Vermont events, are completely underappreciated and undercovered from the perspective of like international media.
Totally agree.
It's just like, okay, how many friggin' stories can we tell about Unbound or some other pancake flat, like way too long gravel race with a road surface that never changes, and that people just slap on aero bars to do because they're going to be pedaling straight forever. No doubt that is hard to do and hard to complete, and it is an accomplishment, but like it's just not what I'm into. And I've been to those events a bunch and I've documented them, but I thought the course was going to be slightly easier this year because maybe it was like couple miles less, but I think because of the class 4 roads due to the flooding were a little bit rougher, made it feel harder overall. Plus those like last 3 climbs on Club Road, that when you look at the elevation profile, it doesn't catch your eye in comparison to like what happened prior, or the hills prior. But then you're like, fatigue is compounded and you get there and like you have these 3 punchers that you're just like, what in the world? Like, these climbs are ridiculous. And then you coast down to the finish and you finish. But
then that finish is gnarly. Like that finish that goes back behind Brownsville over that bridge, and you're like cutting through these fields, and it is like very like cyclocross.
It's so backwoods. It's like
and you come like around that guardrail, and then you hit the road, and then you're like, oh shit, nice, I'm on the road. It's like, now you're not on the road for long. You're gonna take that left and head through the field a little bit, and and you're hearing the MC sort of like calling people in, and like that, it's getting louder and louder, and you're hearing the cheering. I mean, there were also tons of people on course. Like I must have passed,
that was, I'd say cool part.
No less than 100 people on the side of the road cheering, like saying funny things, saying things to encourage you. I mean, it was awesome. It really was. We make all these posts on like the West Windsor and like local towns, like Front Porch Forum and the lead up. Just to like notify people about the event. And I try really hard to like be super encouraging and be like, these riders are going to be out here for X amount of hours, like come and watch them, join in on the fun. Like if like come get some food and watch people finish. And like, it was really cool to see it, like a lot of people out in lawn chairs and with their like coolers or grills, like just watching the race. Sitting at the end of their driveway. I was bombing down a hill, and one dude was like, what goes down must go up. Like he's just like yelling that, like as it just like was awesome. It really was. And like I only think I heard one nasty comment, and it was during like the neutral start. It was right after we took the left off Mosquito Road on a house on the right hand side of the road. Someone was like, go home. They were just like sitting in their porch. Go home.
Oh, really? Interesting.
But I mean, compared to last year, where the big
I think I own the field next to that lady's house. I bet she's. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so like that's gonna happen. You're gonna get people that don't understand it at all. I mean, but that must be also like hard to deal with at times. Like you're a person. Like you're not like
totally.
And that's like, you're not just Ovrlnd, or you're not just like someone that's promoting something. Like you have feelings just like everyone else, and that's tough. Like, so I mean, fuck yeah, dude, you fucking crushed it. Thank you so much. You really,
dude, I appreciate that. That means a lot. Like events in general, I think, are such a hot mess that like in the lead up, it's this chaos of stress and cortisol and like not sleeping and not eating. And then it can either go really well or it can go really bad. And then like, if it happens to go really well, it's just this massive release of like, whoa, that we did a good job. That feels awesome.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So like, getting positive feedback from you and other people feels good. But back to your question on if I plan to make it harder. No, I don't want to make it harder, because I think right now it fits into like this niche of like events that not a lot of people are operating in, whereas like we don't do different length courses, because I think that dilutes the accomplishment of the rider. Yes, it's nice to like appeal to more people and make it accessible to more people, which I also think we work really hard to do. But like when you have like a 10-mile option, a 15-mile option, a blue, red, green, yellow, rainbow colored course, it dilutes what you're actually doing together. And I think like it's really cool that 1,000 people line up to do the exact same thing. Yes, some people don't complete it. They can still hang out afterwards, but like for the people that complete it, they did something that was really hard and like legit and like reinforced by the fact that like there was no other option.
Right.
And then I think that option.
Yeah. No, sorry.
No, you're good. I think that option too is like all gravel races don't need to be 200 miles long. Like there's something really cool that like the front people that finish in this race can like have a race that is intense and different and like quote Ian, relentless in the sense that like climbing, descending, but not descending and resting, like descending technical stuff or stuff that you really have to pay attention on, and then you're climbing again. So that's an interesting challenge for them. And then it's just like 55 miles can become something that's incredibly hard for somebody who's average to just complete.
Sure.
So the goal is to like maintain that philosophy and not necessarily make it harder. But like if we have to change the course, the course has changed a lot over 10 years. Like I'll always change the course most likely, but like the goal is to maintain that like, you know, philosophy of and niche of where it kind of fits into the landscape.
Yeah. Well, hell yeah. Thank you. Thanks again for taking the time to do this. Is there anything you want to say? Anything else you want to get out there before
no,
you
likewise,
packing, man. I guess.
Yeah, I got to pack. No, just thanks for inviting me on and being willing to chat. And
hell yeah.
I hope you guys come back. And then I was talking to Brian. I was like, yeah, if you guys are in the area, we should ride. We should run. It'd be fun. Yep.
Yeah, let's ride together. I'll do some running on some trails too. I'm not much of a runner, but I would love to do that.
But my secret like thing is getting more cyclists into running, because I now am obsessed with running. So you got to come on a trail run or something.
All right. All right, I'm in. And yeah, I will if I don't see you before next year at Ovrlnd, I'll see you then, but I'd love to run together, ride together. And thanks again for taking the time to do this. And thanks for giving me a chance after I was a prick to you on social media.
Dude. Yeah. All good, man. All cool. Good. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Ansel. Yeah. Later.
Talk soon. Peace.
Hi, I am back. I am John, of course. You were already listening to the podcast before, unless you somehow skipped forward like an hour into the podcast or something. But I am here with fellow IJAH members, Brian Cauti, Adam Carroll. We all did Ovrlnd together. Jeremy isn't with us. He's going to join me later in the show. How are you guys? Thank you for coming.
I'm great. Thanks for having
me. I'm doing great too.
Still riding the high of Ovrlnd?
Still riding the high, drinking my Overland Ale.
Overland Ale. Yeah. How was the Overland Ale this year? That's something that they did last year. They did it. How would you guys? What could you compare it to last year's? Do you remember what last year's was like?
I remember enjoying more last year's more. I can't remember exactly, but I remember enjoying last year's more.
Last year was
it's all
Zero Gravity,
right?
Yeah.
Zero Gravity, yeah.
Different brewer. I liked the label last year. Had the little bike on it. This year it has like the cool guy cars that they all had.
Man, they got some cool ass cars, don't they?
Yeah.
Went for a bike race, got the car show.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to talk about our experiences with Ovrlnd this year. We all did it last year. Now we were back for 2023 with Jeremy, and let's start at the very beginning. Let's rewind the tape back to January. We were all waiting to sign up, and I think the anticipation started there. And then 8 months later, I feel like the sign-up process wasn't as bad as it was. Not bad. Bad is the wrong word for it. It wasn't as congested as it was in 2022. Would you guys say the same?
I mean, I had my alarm set, so I don't really know, because I was like 10 a.m. January 1st. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, we just did it. Yeah. And so we camped. I feel like let's talk about our camping setup first. We all sort of had a different camping setup than last year. Adam's tent is almost as big as the room that I'm sitting in now. And
that was wild.
We sort of like learned from what we did last year, and we camped again this year, and we were once again one of the first people set up. There was, there's always someone, there's always a fly in the ointment, if you will, that was like, no, you can't park here. But that person wasn't even affiliated with. What was up with that guy? What was that guy's deal?
He was just a guy. He was table guy.
That was the guy that lit the table on fire
last year.
Yeah. That's in the video, him lighting the table on fire, or is there a photo of it? It's in the video from last year. So if you haven't watched our video from last year, we're also going to be putting out a video for this year. I sort of am assuming that the podcast will come out first, but who knows? We're just recording it now. Video later, and the parking attendant that we met, Jesse, that guy fucking ruled. Jesse,
that was the man. Yeah.
Jesse was cool.
He was like, "You guys are fine," you know, because technically it's car camping, but like I paid for a car and drove me up, so I didn't have a car. And basically, they were like, "You got 10 feet per person," so we sort of divvied out the four of us, our 40 feet, and Brian and Jeremy had these cool like camping in the back of their cars. Brian, how did you feel about that, camping in the back of your car?
In the car was fine, but I would get a sleeping mat next time because that little bump where your seats fold down fucking
wasn't working for you
on my back. But in the car was fine. I was dry. Temperature was nice.
Yeah.
But
it didn't rain as much as we thought it was going to, right? I mean, there were sort of
yeah, we got lucky.
It was pretty good.
Yeah. We were thinking it was going to be raining during setup. We were thinking it was going to be like scattered thunderstorms during the race, and it wasn't. It basically ended up just raining like 3 or 4 p.m. after the race.
Yeah, all the four of us were done.
Yeah, for like 20 minutes, if that.
Yeah, and then we ended up going up and like
weekend.
getting food. It was great.
Much nicer than last year.
Camp again next year? Would you camp again?
Yeah.
Camping rules. These people staying down at the Holiday Inns. Get out of here. Get out of here staying at your Holiday Inn. I think the camping's a lot of fun. You're meeting people. You're talking, you know, like people are walking by. You're getting to see everyone sort of. It was nice being there early too. You know, sort of kings of the castle, if you will.
You have to choose
we
your
sort
spot.
of like, I think there's sort of a presence that we bring, you know, with Jeremy playing Drake really loudly or whatever. It was a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I would camp again. I do think that camping might not be like the best idea to do the day before a race, right? Especially if you're like sleeping in the back of your car or something. But I do think that the payoff of being there, waking up in the morning there is amazing, right? I mean, really,
I just think it's all about the vibe.
Yeah.
Just like the way the whole weekend flows together.
Right. It makes me want to camp at other events, right? Like we're sort of already been discussing maybe what we might want to do next year. We all did Farmer's Daughter this year. I want to camp at Farmer's Daughter next year because it's just like, just seems rad. You get to meet more people. You're not just like in a hotel or something and you can just like hang out. You wake up in the morning and you're there. You're ready to go. Even like, I think most of us woke up around 6 a.m. The race wasn't until 10, but it was like a nice and easy morning, right? Brian,
you don't have to go anywhere.
When did you go for a run? Did you go for a run before?
No.
When was that?
Yeah, today.
Run? Wait, you didn't strap on your sneakers and run when we were camping?
No.
Oh, is that just sarcastic?
Yeah.
Did you say I'm going for
classic?
A run? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I probably said
I thought
that
you
like
really
10
did
times, but I never actually did.
I thought you really did at one point. Just went for like a quick mile jog. There is that.
I didn't do the mountain mile.
Let's all do the mountain mile next year.
No, you guys will watch it.
No, you're doing it.
Mountain mile. I'll do it next year.
If John does it, Adam has to do it.
I'm top 30 next year, man. I don't want to ruin it.
Wow. But there's a combined. Like whoever finishes best in the run, best in the race.
Yeah.
So, would you say you're going for top 10 next year?
Top 30. You don't want to ruin it, you know.
Wow.
Top 30. Adam, you did really well, Adam. We're all so proud of you. Maybe as proud as your mom is of you. You got 50th place. Good job, Adam. Nice work.
Thank you.
Sub 4 hour.
Sub 4 hour, dude. How you feeling?
Honestly, the place doesn't mean as much as the sub 4 hour. That's kind of what I had in my mind. And honestly, I was even more stoked because as I was realizing the course was more difficult. The fact that I did better, I got 401 last year or something, Rhode Island. The fact that I did better on a harder course and broke sub 4 was more important than the place to me. Like that was my personal goal. I was cool. I beat it. I got like 356 or something.
Yeah. So the course was a little bit shorter this year, but I think
it was more challenging in more ways than one. Not only the
parkour of it, because of like all the floods
that Vermont got, everything was like super washed out, and especially like those class 4 sections, like Rich Trail. Ansel and I were talking about it. He really wanted someone to try to like clear the whole thing, like on a traditional gravel bike. You know, maybe some people were successful on mountain bikes or whatever, but I don't think anyone
was it confirmed if did Ian or Kyle or any of them clear it?
I do not think anyone cleared it on a traditional gravel bike. Not 100%. Not without at least like putting a foot down or something.
I cannot imagine being able to. I mean it. Yeah.
Because that shit is wild. And
that's something that Ansel and I talked about a little bit. Is there's sort of this niche of what that race gives compared to some of these other premier gravel events. You know, we talked about Unbound or Steamboat or Gravel Locos, or, you know, those are all races that everyone that finishes them it's a hell of an accomplishment, but it's very different than 55 miles and 7,500 feet of climbing with 7 class 4 sections. If you're not aware of what a class 4 road is, basically, if you asked our friend Brian from last year, it's just fucked up road. It's just fucked up road. It's road that they don't touch. They don't
It's
do
like
anything to it.
even calling it a road is generous. Like most of those sections, ATV,
Rich
you couldn't pass
Trail
it.
is
Yeah,
not a road.
Not a road.
Yeah.
No, you can't
Rich
drive up
Trail
it.
hasn't been a road since the 1600s.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like what they used to bring cattle down at one point, and then they were like, well, it's just like a throughway, you know, and it is open to the public, but it's totally unmaintained, and it's basically a hiking trail, right? And it's not a hiking trail like you might find around here. Maybe most of our listeners are from the southern New England area, and maybe you've been to like Arcadia, or maybe you've gone to the and like this stuff it's steep as hell. It's grueling. The gravel
muddy,
roads,
wet rocks,
beautiful, and the class 4 roads, are muddy and wet, and like, I mean, there were parts where we were just plowing through puddles and like streams up and down, and I mean, it's a hell of a challenge, and I think that's sort of what Ansel will be going for. Not to speak for him, but in the future is sort of finding this box of a very challenging, you know, course that doesn't necessarily have to be 200
so
miles,
hard.
but it's still hard as hard as
that. The metrics do not do that ride justice, because I mean, if you did that on a road bike or even gravel around here, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I literally worked my butt off as hard as I could for a 13.9 mile an hour average ride.
Right.
And that was like full gas effort that I couldn't give anymore.
Right. Yeah, and that's something too, is like people will look at just like the surface level and be like, oh, what was your average speed? It's like, who fucking cares, dude? Like, you know, you're like,
that's all out the window.
Yeah, it's all out the window. It is just totally it sits apart from any other like event or course that I've ever ridden personally. And I do think that like it should be considered up there with these other races that people do nationally or internationally, right? Like everyone talks about Unbound, right? Everyone fucking talks about Unbound. Let's get people talking about Ovrlnd, right? Like, because Ovrlnd,
I mean, at least in my mind, that is in New England. That's like here, but it's only locally. Yeah, I'd like to see it more national exposure.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I would consider it the premier gravel event here locally.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you know, we set up our camp, we hung out, it was a little bit overcast. There weren't too many people there, but then we wake up the next morning and people are starting to file in, and we're saying that it's great to be there early in the morning. And what our morning of, we did a little like shakeout ride. We went up the hill, and we lined up pretty early this year. We lined up earlier than last year, and we lined up closer than last year, right?
Yeah, we were within 20 yards of the start.
Yeah, like line 3 or 4, like the third or fourth line of people, essentially. You know.
Yeah.
I do.
Somehow still didn't seem far enough.
No.
Somehow still didn't seem like we were far enough ahead.
No, because even if you're starting in that point, people behind you are still trying to pass you, even if it is a quote unquote neutral start. Like,
you get boxed out instantly.
Yeah, people fly by you. They're putting down the power just to get down friggin' Ski Tow Road and take that first left.
Guy with a lawnmower.
Yeah, the dude with a lawnmower just mowing his lawn. Was that the same guy from the picture?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the same guy from the picture that you sent us? God,
yeah, it's so good.
Guy is just mowing his lawn like it's the best thing. We got to share it.
It's just Saturday.
Share it on our Instagram. It's just a regular old day for this guy. He's mowing the lawn, and like here we go. He's just mowing his lawn. He's just literally turning around in the middle of the road. And what does the caption say? Because it's a little bit more. The caption for us, Brian.
It says, "Don't forget about the e-bike category."
That's really great. It really is. So we're all sort of like staying together at this point. We stuck together for what? Maybe 10 miles until
I was gonna say about 10 miles.
Yeah, and then I never saw you guys again.
The second class 4, I think, was the last time I saw you and Jeremy after the
Yeah.
second class 4.
Mhm.
And then
that sounds
Adam and I were together till Tarbell Hill, and then he dropped my ass.
Yeah, well, I was trying to
Nice,
catch
Adam.
you after that class 4 because you got out of there before me.
Oh, he did? Nice.
Yeah, I took a little tumble, that little spill, and Brian got away. And then, I saw him up the road, and I was putting
I
down some
did,
power
but
to
then
try to
Adam
catch
did.
him.
Brian, did
Yeah,
you?
I saw you coming up.
No,
What?
go ahead.
No,
please,
I
go ahead.
saw
Yeah.
after I got through the second class 4, I kind of slowed up because I could see Adam. I turned back and I saw him coming up, and I'm like, well, there's no point for me to hammer ahead. I waited up for him, and then the two of us rode to the 106 crossing up Tarbell, and then he fucking dropped my ass.
And Tarbell's something else, right? It's about 5 miles long. Is that right? And about 1,000 feet of elevation.
So it's not. So Tarbell turns into another road.
Okay.
So the two combined roads, it was like 4 miles and a little over 1,000 feet.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Which is amazing. Yeah, like about 250 feet a mile, or give or take.
It just
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. And then, like, you still have so much race to go, like, so how do you manage that effort? Adam, how did you, like, were you looking at your heart rate or your power or anything? Like,
I could do my heart rate and my power. Like, I was looking at those numbers, but really the one trick that I had was the fact that my gearing was so crappy. I had no choice but to just go fast up the hill. I mean, I was 40, 42, and it was like, there was a minimum amount of power I had to put down to just keep going. And it ended up being that just kind of was like a certain speed. And it was harder than I probably wanted to go, but I was feeling good. It's the beginning of the race. You're in the zone. You have the adrenaline rush. And I just kind of was doing my thing. Yeah.
I mean, like, looking back on it, would you have done that portion any differently? Like, I mean, you did great. You had a great
slower.
finish.
Yeah, maybe marginally slower because I was hanging on to the group that was towing around like towards the end and before it got broken up. But I was doing some pulls on the front of that group at the end of the ride, but not as many as I should have or could. I was just like hanging on for dear life. So I would have liked to have a little more of an effort at the end. But if I had a 38 tooth ring, it probably would have been a little bit better. But yeah, 40-42 was worse than what I had last year. So
did you pretty much stay with the same group for the rest of the ride?
Yeah, I was with a lot of the same people for a long time. And it got to a point where I turned around and there was like no one behind us. And it was like 8 of us. And I was like, oh, this is like, I can't get dropped from this group, even if I'm just hanging on the back. I'm like, I cannot lose these guys or else I'm going to be alone.
Right. Brian, what about yourself? Were you riding with
groups at that point? Were you surfing groups, or how did that pan out for you after you and Adam were separated?
This year was like completely different than last year. Last year I worked with a bunch of groups. Yeah. And I don't know. Last year I was weird because I felt better and I was like more in the zone. I don't know what happened this year. It was kind of like when I hit Tarbell, I lost the group that we were with, and it was kind of split up from that class 4.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I when I hit Tarbell, for some reason I just like wasn't putting in an effort. I was like just kind of like spinning up it for some reason. I just had like a weird mindset. I don't know. But I got up after I finished that climb. I was kind of popping in and out with different groups, but I was like mostly by myself the whole time. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, sometimes it just doesn't.
Weird. Sometimes it just doesn't go your way. I mean, whether it's like your legs or like with me, we're just like, you're getting a fucking mechanical. Like, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, there's, you know. But I will say, like, I feel like, all right, let's
move past Adam. Adam did really well. We get it. He placed 50th. We're really proud of Adam. But if it's a bad day,
it's still worth it, right? Would you say that, Brian?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there was a lot of points. Let's see. Yeah, when we got to Tarbell, it was when we hit Rich Trail. I was going into Rich Trail with a couple people.
Yeah.
And that very first section where it's like super steep, where it's still rideable before it gets into that crazy like rock ledge shit. I was putting in the power to get up that one section, and a right hamstring cramped. Like I felt it coming on. And the second that came on, I was like, I'm fucked. Like, so, and that was like in the worst possible spot for that to start. Cause I knew like Rich Trail is like a mile long, and just knowing that I had to get through that. And then now knowing that I have a leg cramp starting, I was like, this is fucking awful. So rode it as much
and you're
as
still
I could.
like what, 20 miles in? Like,
yeah. If that. Dude in front of me dabbed, stopped everybody that we were with because I was still riding it. And then there was the pressure of all the people behind me that I knew were riding it. I'm like, I cannot fuck up because then I'm gonna fuck all them up. Dude in front of me fucked up, so he fucked all of us up. And I'm like, I just grabbed my bike and started running because I couldn't do it. Like
you can't start once you stop. Yeah.
No, it's way too steep and way too loose. Whatever, you can't get back going.
I was having mud issues in SPD cleats, even getting mud out of my cleats enough to clip back in.
Same. I stomped my cleats on my pedals a bunch of times, like, slamming them just to get the mud out. And even when I was cleaning my bike yesterday or the day before or whatever, there was so much mud came out of my friggin' pedals. I couldn't believe how much mud was in my pedals.
Yeah.
It was nasty.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know how many people passed me on Rich Trail, at least 10 or 15, just from everyone running and walking. And then, by the time I hit the second aid station, going up, you stop at that aid station, then you go up that steep hill.
Yeah.
And then it hit me again. It went from my hamstring all the way down to my leg. And I was just like, anytime I tried to put power in, that was above threshold, it was impossible. I was just like, I almost stopped. I almost got off my bike and sat on the side of the road, but I just kept going. I started punching it, which is that dude across, the dude that was camping across from us was the one that was like, I saw you punching your leg back there. He's like, good on you for not stopping. But
no, seriously, right.
Yeah, I mean, because you do
sucked.
feel like you just want to pull over on the side of the road, and I saw some people doing it. I mean, you're like, "Hey, dude, are you okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, cramp," and just leg, because it was pretty sunny, and if whether it's a mix of hydrating or the extra hard effort or whatever it is, maybe it's just not your day, and the cramps are going to come anyway.
It was weird because I couldn't eat my bars either. So I don't know what happened. I've never really had any of that happen to me before. So I don't know if it was a hydration thing because I did switch to flow. I didn't have the usual scratch that I usually have. So maybe it was trying to change my nutrition day of, which is probably a bad idea. But whatever. Finished.
Yeah, I mean, we still had fun. You live and you learn.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll all do better next year. Adam's trying to top 10 it next year or whatever he's saying.
I gotta switch age categories. It's gonna get harder. Literally, it's gonna be harder 30 to 39 than it is 29.
I like to think I would have got a pretty decent finish had my leg didn't cramp, because I was still 423, I think, and 113th. I feel like I could have got top 100.
You definitely would.
I didn't even.
Maybe
you guys
year.
saw what I placed. Don't even tell me. I didn't look. I don't give a fuck. It wasn't my day. Yeah.
Like you said, it's 4 hours of racing, but a weekend of fun stuff. So it's just more than
that's another thing.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. I feel like you 2 flat tires, crashing, and losing your GoPro is a lot worse than me dealing with leg cramps.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, my rib is feeling a little bit. My rib is feeling a little bit better. I rode today. It didn't hurt me nearly as badly as when we rode yesterday, because we did a nice little recovery ride, and
a nice little recovery ride.
It was recovery-ish.
As Brian's turning up that class 4 section.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell what's going to be what, especially because 80% of the roads out there are gravel roads.
Listen,
so you're not sure how maintained it's going to be.
Yeah,
I made a route today, and I went most popular up there.
I'm going on
what did
Google
you do,
Maps. I'm going on Google Maps Street View now to when I make routes out there, so I can actually.
They have Street View on those roads.
Well, no, but some of them, but no, like you know what I mean, like zoom in.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like the little guy you drag and you drop him on there.
You're not dragging that guy on Class 4 roads. I don't think Google Maps is.
Yeah, they're not bringing those cars with the big cameras on top of them on those roads. I don't think they are. That was a beautiful ride though that we did yesterday.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. And that was another thing about my experience with Ovrlnd this year was I didn't take in like any of the vistas last year because it was just race effort. And this year, because I, double flatted and went down pretty hard. After I went down hard, I was like, I'm just trying to finish. So I wasn't like, I wasn't at threshold. I wasn't at 172.
It's so awesome.
You're seeing these and it's just so beautiful out there. So beautiful. Not to mention that like even just a Scutney Outdoors is like a beautiful venue. You're like looking up at the mountain and you're looking down. Like it's just like
fog every morning rolling over the top of it. Like just perfect. It's so cool.
Yeah. Illuminated by the sun, all that sort of shit. So, I mean, I had a blast. I do think that the event was run so much better than it was last year. That's something that Ansel and I talked about, which I'm sure was a hard decision to make. Instead of having 1,500 racers, there was 1,000, which obviously means you're bringing in less money. But I do think that it made for a much better event, a better supported event. And
the police details were excellent at the corners of roads.
At the corners and stuff were so good, and all the signs everywhere. Like not only the signs that were like, telling you to be cautious because, hey, you're about to descend and there's a corner coming ahead, but also the signs that say like, hey, there's a bike event going on. So you're spreading the awareness in the community. Famously last year, we all rode by the #Cancel Ansel sign, and these people that are like shooting. And Ansel was telling me earlier in the podcast that like that was not his first interaction with those people. They were like, "Don't fucking ride by our house," like if you do, we're gonna fucking shoot our guns. And if those guns happen to hit, like it was that sort of shit. You'll hear it when you listen to the podcast, but like there was a lot of attitude like that last year, and I think this year. I only heard that one lady in the very beginning that was like, "Go home." She was like sitting in her screened-in Porsche.
In the most mundane voice ever.
Yeah.
Where was that?
It was right
where the lady
before we even
flagged.
ran to the lawnmower guy. Yeah. Like right there. And it was right next to the field, next to the overflow field. One of those houses right next to the overflow field. And other than that, the spectators, right? Like at least 100 people on the side of the road cheering us on, if not 200 people, right? Like saying funny things and just like having an absolute blast. I mean, it was the most race experience I've ever experienced. Like sure, it's no Tour or Vuelta or anything. But
it was
I don't
cool.
know if you guys saw the stage of the Vuelta today. I would say Ovrlnd is organized better than today's Vuelta stage because that shit was fucked up.
I saw the ending.
Oh, the finish?
Yeah, you see that shit? You see that shit?
Yeah. Phil Guyman
Remco fucking crashed right into Remco crashed into a policewoman. The fuck?
Phil Guyman literally posted and tagged him and said, like, I know how it feels.
Yeah.
Fell over going through the banner.
Yeah, the banner. Was that Mal Washington?
Yeah.
He did that? Yeah, a couple years ago, last year.
I thought the lack of the people. Oh, God.
But there was a lot of people. There was way more people, I feel like, this year throughout the course, like on the side of the road. Like my favorite was like there was like a woman and a child in the middle of Rich Trail. Did you guys
sitting
see
on
that?
the side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What were you doing in there?
They were just like chilling, right? They're just like sitting on like the mossy berm, just like, hey,
watching the carnage.
So, but yeah, I love it. Sick.
It really is.
Yeah, and I think like with the lack of people too, like the post ride events that I think we all agreed were better too, in the sense that like we didn't wait in a line. We didn't go up early for dinner. We didn't wait in a line. Like we didn't wait in a beer line.
Nope.
Yeah, there was so much more room to like maneuver and do stuff up in the top area.
I would say if we do anything better next year, we got to bring more food.
Bring more food.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So let's go around the circle real quick and let's talk like
our favorite moment and our least favorite moment. Adam,
is your favorite moment finishing 50th?
let's put that to the side. We get it, Adam.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to harp on you. I don't mean to harp on you. I know we've been talking about it more than you.
I just felt good. Like, honestly, just the race felt good. Like, I felt like I handled the single track, and people are going to be, I'm going to say one of my favorite things that I did was I had a dropper post, and you're going to get those guys in, you don't need a dropper post. No, you don't. Everyone else did it without a dropper post, but it was friggin' awesome to have the dropper post on those sections. I don't care.
Yeah.
I put more weight on my bike. That's a penalty that I paid. It was great to have. So.
Yeah, you put minimal weight on your bike, and it worked for you, and it's your bike, so everyone else can fuck off.
Yeah, it worked for me. I felt good. Got a little cut on my hand from where the lever was just digging into me, so maybe I'll move it a little bit. But other than that, it was good. But probably the part that like I would change, I wouldn't even say that this is on Overland. It's more the vendors. I just wish they had more free crap. Maybe it's me being greedy, but
Sure.
Like I wish there was more free crap. And like you know, they bring in the vendors, so I don't think it's on Overland as an organization. But like I wish the vendors gave more stuff away for free. Like if I go to an expo for like anything else, I just expect to get like koozies, t-shirts, this, that when you walk around, and I would have liked to see a little more of that.
Yeah, Brian's rocking his 2022 Vermont Overland t-shirt.
It's such a sick shirt. I wanted that this year.
Sweet shirt.
Yeah, there really wasn't
handing out shirts.
There wasn't anything going on at those booths. It was like Specialized had like 3 bikes hanging there, and that was all they brought.
Right, they were handing out bottles last year. I got myself a bottle last year, but not
this year. Yeah, but I mean, maybe that, you know, I don't know how that all shakes out. I imagine it is because of the people, the companies that are coming, and it has absolutely nothing to do with like the organizers at all, right? It's just like what they're deciding to do.
They bring in a company, and it's on whoever, and I begrudgingly took the SRAM coffee. It was all right.
Coffee by
SRAM. Yeah.
Shimano, it would be better.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah, the Shimano coffee is really crisp. It doesn't make a loud noise when you swallow. And you actually, if you have a cup of Shimano coffee, you can't drop it. SRAM coffee, you drop the cup all the time.
Out. Yeah,
just
kind of tastes like DOT fluid too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, cool. Brian, you got any other like closing statements, any criticisms, any things that we didn't mention, or whatever about the weekend?
I don't really have any. I mean, criticisms, I guess, would go back to the food thing. I guess like having more food accessible would be nice for people that are camping there the whole weekend with like, what the package that you're paying for. But I mean, on the flip side of that, like the food vendors, like the Brownsville Pantry is amazing.
Unreal.
So good.
Unreal.
So good.
They're so good.
They killed it. And going there for those burritos on Sunday was awesome.
We had Brownsville 3 days in a row, effectively.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we had those apple hand pies too. Like
apple hand pies. So good. No real criticisms really. I think obviously the ride is sick, but the camping is the best part, I think, in my opinion.
I agree. Just
if you're gonna do it, you gotta do that.
Yeah. Just us sitting around being fucking idiots for 2 full days, it's just like
so much fun. And
Seinfeld in the middle of the night.
Seinfeld is so
Jeremy with the hot spot. Shout out. Yeah. That's the high point of the entire trip is Jeremy's hot spot. There was no self-service there.
We're the only people with service on that campground.
Right. We all have Verizon, so we had 0 service. Jeremy had AT&T, and runs
the one spot in the entire world that AT&T has better service.
Yeah. I mean, it was great. I definitely I went into it with a sourpuss attitude, and I was like, I'm not fucking doing this again. I think I probably said that 5 times, and I've totally flipped my coin. I will do it again. And I don't fucking care if I crash again. I will run wider tires. That's for sure.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. What's your thought on that after doing the 35s? Like, what's your? I mean, the flat might not be 35 related, but like, how do you feel? What would you do again next year differently?
Yeah, so I don't know if like the flat was 35 related, but maybe it was pressure related, which inherently is 35 related.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a fucking hole the size of like my pinky nail, like in the middle of my tire. How do you avoid that? You know, even if it's a 40, maybe a lower pressure. But yeah, I'll run 38s or 40s or something next year. Why the fuck not? I mean, hopefully I will do better next year than I did this year. And if that's what it takes to, you know me, I'm just like such like a fucking roadie. I want to run skinny tires, and bigger tires make me feel mentally slower. Even though I know I've seen the studies, I've seen all that shit.
Can we get Dylan Johnson on the podcast? Do you think we can hit him up?
Sure. Yeah. We'll try to get Dylan on the podcast. I'm okay. Let's try that.
I will say, running 40s, I felt like I didn't feel hindered on the dirt road sections, and I was running Ramblers, which weren't even the ones I wanted to run. I wanted to run the Pathfinders. I just didn't get them in time, and I would have gone 42s for that. But I didn't feel slowed down at all by them, and they felt very good in the Class 4 sections at about 30 psi for me. So
yeah, tires. I'll run wider tires. You know, I'm just gonna get over it. You gotta get over it. I gotta fucking try to run wider tires on my gravel bike.
I ran 35s, and I feel like they were great.
You had 35s or 38s?
38, sorry.
Yeah.
38.
No, NBX has a brand new pair of 38s waiting for me, so I'll pick those up and put them on my gravel bike, and maybe I'll try to go up and down.
What were the 35s you were running? Brand? Like model?
Terravale, Cannonballs.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Brian, you had Terravales as well. You had a Rutland and a...
I had a Rutland and a... what's the other one?
I can't think of the other one. Going with Washburn. Yeah. Nice. And Adam, what did you run?
I was running Maxxis Rambler 40s.
Oh, right. You said that. Yeah.
Ironically, one of my buddies just got 2.1 inch wide Terravales. I just rode with him like an hour before this podcast.
Yeah. What'd you think?
They were pretty cool. I mean, he likes like the chunky gravel stuff, so he like it was his first ride on them. I mean, they're heavy, but yeah. Cool.
All right. Any what is it?
I asked Adam if he was getting changed. Is his camera's turned off?
Adam turned his camera off.
I'm sparing you the me trying to wrangle my dogs.
Oh, nice. I think that means it's a good time for us to wrap up the podcast. Thank you guys. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for hanging out over the weekend. I thought it was a fucking blast.
Looking forward to the next one.
Looking forward to the next one. And, we do have some other things coming up for the rest of the year, but I do think that Ovrlnd is one of the biggest events that we do. It's one of the ones that we look forward to for basically the whole entire year. If not from the minute that we drive away from a Scutney Outdoors, we look forward to it the next year. So, thanks to Ansel. Thanks to all the volunteers for doing it. I'm gonna talk to Jeremy in just a little bit, but thank you, Brian. Thank you, Adam, for hanging out and for doing the podcast and for being fun people to ride with. That's what it's all about, really. Yeah, Adam, you're fun.
I'm fun.
Yeah. Brian, you're fun.
Thanks.
Brian's fun.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Later.
Bye.
Peace out.
All right, and here we are. Jeremy Newman is here on the It's Just a Hill podcast to talk about Ovrlnd 2023. Jeremy, thank you for making time to do this. How are you?
Good. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. We sort of talked about it a little bit earlier with Adam and Brian, but tell me about we all drove up at the same time, right? We met up at Brownsville Butcher and Pantry, and we set up our campsite. What was your camping setup like? It was a little bit different this year than it was last year, right?
Yeah, last year I didn't really camp before the race because I had to work the day before down in Rhode Island, and I ended up driving. I don't remember what time I left at, like 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it was a little less stressful this year, but I would say that I probably got better sleep last year just because the humidity, sleeping in my tent. But drove up. We all met at 11 o'clock in Vermont, right down the street from a Scutney mountain. And it was a lot less rushed this year for me.
I'm sure. Yeah. Like leaving in the morning, driving like 3 or so hours and fighting the traffic for parking. Cause there's like, I mean, last year was 1,500 people and that's, a lot of cars or big overflow lots and all of that stuff. So
yeah, it went from me being probably one of the last people in the lot to us being the first people in the lot. Yeah,
we were there early. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I hate the feeling of being rushed. It's like my least favorite thing. And just to be able to get up and, ease into it. It was it was nice.
And so, not necessarily like a restful night in your own bed, but you did have a pretty sick camping setup. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I brought I have an old Tacoma, and I just bought a tent that fits in the back of the truck there.
Yeah,
it kind of was a little not the right fit, but I made it work, and then just blew up an air mattress that fit in the back there, and yeah, it was great. It was better than most tent setups that I've ever had before. Usually I'm just like sitting on the ground and wake up in a puddle. Not that I didn't wake up in a puddle one of the nights, but we got some video of me watching Seinfeld in my tent.
That to me is a true highlight of the weekend is you watching Seinfeld. And like, I don't know, my perspective was I didn't know you were about to start watching Seinfeld. You crawled into the back of your truck, right? And then all of a sudden it's just like, boom, ba-dum, dum, dum, and it was the funniest fucking thing. And we sort of alluded to it earlier in the podcast, but like you were the one with service.
I was
service up there.
I was the designated hotspot. I could have just like unplugged everybody for the weekend.
Right. You were running a hotspot off your phone. That's how you were watching Seinfeld. That's how we were sort of staying in touch with friends and family and like social media and all that sort of shit. So thanks for that. We should have counted how many times Brian asked you to put on your hotspot.
At least 25 times within that.
At least. And like would be like one of the last things he said before bed and the first things he said upon waking up, on those few days. Yeah. So what do you think about that camping setup? Would you camp like that again? Would you change it for next year? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so actually one of my favorite parts about Overland is like I've always been into like the utilitarianism of like being able to travel with like some sort of vehicle, and seeing people's setups is just like inspiring to me. I think it's so cool to have just something modular that you can like take on the road and you'll have like everything you need. Like seeing people with showers outside, that's like a huge thing for me because we were talking about it. I hate being like the feeling of being dirty with like no solution.
Right.
And like seeing people just even having one of those gravity fed bags to be able to wash themselves. So if we do it next year, I think I'm going to just like think a little bit more ahead, change up some stuff. I would like to eliminate the whole, I think like the most anxiety for me driving up was like thinking about having to set my tent up with like potential rain.
Right.
So I think like having something that is like already set up, whether it be like a cap of some sort where I could just like blow up an air mattress and stuff it in.
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of like a cool, less stressful thing. And then something else that I was like thinking about was, I don't know, just sitting in the back of my tent, just like sweating, but also cold because of all the humidity. I was like, it'd be really nice to have just like a small dehumidifier just to like pull some of the humidity out of that. I don't know if you guys were like sweating as much as I was, but I woke up in the middle of the night. I think on the second night was the worst. And I was just like drenched in sweat. So I'm like underneath a cover, cold, but just like sweating. So I could like fan my blanket out to like get some air circulation. So yeah, just a little, last year was just kind of like an impromptu thing. I just like bought this little tent that I could stick in the back of my wife's car, and that was fine. But I mean, I wasn't trying to get good sleep then.
And we all sleep after the race, right? Like, because you did camp the night after the race, although not before, right?
Yeah, I would say both nights were probably just as good. Like I got just as good sleep both nights, which wasn't like spectacular.
Yeah, it was just so humid. It was so, and like we, it was going to rain overnight. So we had our rain flies and we had like our windows in our tents or whatever setups like all zipped up. And there's just you're just like breathing in there for like 6 or 8 hours or whatever. And it's just like you're creating your own biodome and it's just gross. It's fucking gross.
Yeah, like one part of my tent was kind of wet. So my pillow being pushed up against it just started wicking up the pillow. And I'm like waking up feeling it, and I was like, it's getting pretty moist. So I like started to scoot away from the wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea of how I would do it next year, even if we do any sort of camping next year, camp to bike, because just being able to sleep good is just huge. Absolutely. When it comes to riding your bike the next day. I track like the recovery I track my sleep and I track my recovery. Yeah. And every single night, the leading up to it, I had like 100% recovery, and I was feeling good. I was doing like a bunch of training stuff, and the night before the race, I slept bad, and I woke up and it said like 20% recovery. I was like, oh god, of course, because I got maybe 4 hours of sleeping in the back there. So I would really like to figure that out just for that fact,
Yeah, same boat. Like I was getting great sleep, you're waking up 80-90% recovery, and then all of a sudden it's like 32% on race day, which recovery is only a portion of sort of like what you have going for you on race day, but also just like mentally to see that number, it's a bummer. It's like just such a bummer,
I'd say I felt like my recovery score that day.
Yeah. And so let's talk about your race. So we talked about everyone else's. I had an absolute shit day. How did you feel about your race, waking up that morning and then getting started at 10 a.m.? What was sort of your thoughts leading up to it, and then like on the morning of, the anticipation wise, and then how did you feel about the effort of the day?
Yeah, so I thought the morning went pretty smoothly. Being able to walk up and get some food from the caterer and get some coffee and just kind of like ease into it. Showing up, what did we wake up at 6 o'clock, and the race didn't start until 10. So we had like a good amount of time to just chill beforehand and drink coffee and eat whatever. I thought that was like pretty great. And I think that's a huge part of like racing is like reducing the anxiety beforehand and just feeling relaxed going up to the starting line. It just made me feel a lot better about the race. I didn't know what to expect, really. I actually went into the race thinking it was going to be easier than it was last year for some reason. I don't know if I was just feeling better, but yeah, standing at the starting line, I felt good, other than like the anxiety of like, is somebody going to get hurt kind of thing like that. Like I didn't want to like say it, but it was, everything that happened last year, you kind of just like, you got that in the back of your head.
Right.
And I was standing at the start line, just being like, I can't wait to be like over with this, just knowing that like everybody's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt great. Like up until I'd say like the third pave section, I was doing pretty well. I was like drinking enough water.
Yeah.
And I ended up losing Brian and Adam at one road section because I took like a wrong turn, and they were with a pack way ahead, and I was trying to catch up to them. And I was like, I'm just going to take it slow because we're maybe 8 miles into this 55-mile race, and I don't want to like burn myself out here. So I'm just going to take it easy. And I was under the impression that you were behind me at that point.
Yeah.
And we got past I think it was the second pave section. I came out of the woods, or we came out of a little marshy area, and then you're off to the side pumping up your tire. I was like, oh fuck, John got a flat tire. I was like, I thought John was behind me this whole time. And I did feel bad that I didn't stop, but I honestly, like, I had nothing. I couldn't even fix my own flat tire. Looking at my pack when we were at Brian's mom's house, the couple days after, I was looking through my pack, and all I had in there was tire levers and a spare tire that wouldn't have even worked with my wheels because I had no pump. I didn't even have an Allen key to take my wheel off. So like, if I knew that like during the race, like I would have been way more nervous about like doing like hitting those pave sections as hard as I did.
Yeah.
But that was another thing. I really didn't go as hard as I probably could have. Like I definitely took those pave sections a little easier this year because I feel like I cared more about my bike, which I think was probably my biggest mistake, was like caring about my bike. They were talking about having the like at one point during the race you're going to feel like you're not on the right bike, and I feel like that bike was not the right bike because I just cared about it. And I think that that race, like, you should not ride a bike that you care about.
That's a funny way of looking at it, though, because you're right. Because, like, you know, your bike is like pretty new. It's a beautiful bike. It's like, you know, like the paint job is nice, all the components are nice, you know, and then you're like, okay, let me go ride this thing for 4 hours and beat it to shit. Maybe fall on it. Maybe get scratches and dings on it and stuff. Like I think we all ended up with some battle wounds on our bike, right? You had a little scratch in your derailleur, some other stuff that maybe happened to you.
Yeah, a couple different things, and it's just one of those scenarios where you gotta rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah. You're gonna get scratches on especially a gravel bike at some point. So I feel kind of good about like I didn't do any like carbon damage or anything like that, but I scratched my derailleur. There was like some areas in chain slap because I have a 2x on that bike. So when I was shifted to the small ring, and there was like no slack in the chain, it, like, looking at it, I didn't notice it before, but there's like an inch of clearance between the bottom of the chainstay and the chain. Oh, okay. So when there's like a lot of slack in that, I mean, hitting those rough patches, like, you get chain slap anyways. But that was like, I'm glad that that's.
I think you're right though, because almost like if you break the seal on putting a little bit of damage on your bike, and I sort of view my gravel bike a lot differently than I view my road bike, because if I had like a scratch on the paint on my road, but I ended up with like a paint chip on my top tube. It must have been when I went down, and I've got some various scrapes and scratches on my derailleurs from going down, whether it was on this race or like I went down pretty hard about a month ago on my gravel bike. But yeah, you sort of need to be like a little bit, okay, it's okay. Like the bike's still going to work as long as, like you said, it's not like some carbon damage or anything. And that's sort of what those bikes are meant for. And like you want to have like a race ready bike, right? Like you want to have a light bike. You want to have the right tires, the right pressure and everything. You want to make sure it's all nice and clean. Like we're all taking pictures of our bikes before and we're all proud of our bikes. And then you're just like, okay, let me just go fuck around on this thing for 4 or 5 hours, you know?
Yeah. Cleaning that bike, like a couple days afterwards, I was just like, I don't know what the dirt was hiding. I was like, what am I gonna find when I'm cleaning this thing? But yeah, other than like a couple scratches, like worked out pretty well. Some bolts like loosened up on me. I almost went over the handlebars on this one section that was like completely downhill, rocky pave, where I'm just leaning as far back as I can, but like you can only lean so far back, like pointing straight down a hill. I hit a rock head on and just like I felt a crack and I was like, oh, I don't know what that was, but it must have been like my compression plug in my steer tube. It just like must have boosted up a little bit because there was some slack throughout like the race. I was climbing, and anytime I'd be like putting any pressure on the handlebars, like kind of working to climb up a hill, I'd hear like a creaking noise. I was like, I don't know. I don't want to know what that is.
Yeah.
But getting the race over with and like checking everything over, tightening bolts. That felt good.
Yeah, I have a knock somewhere. I'm bringing my bike to the bike shop after we finish here because I don't know. I thought it was my bottom bracket at first, but then it was still knocking when I wasn't pedaling, which didn't make any sense to me. So I feel like it's one of my hubs, either my front hub or my rear hub. But like, you know, it's not like you're going to wipe the dirt off during the race and figure it out. Like, you're just like, no, fuck this. I got to get back. I'm trying to finish this fucking thing, you know? Like, it's, Yeah, so I want to talk about the class 4 sections real quick, right? So we talked about them. There are like 7 of these class 4 sections, aka fucked up road, which we all love to call it. What is your preference on those sections? Would you rather go up them or would you rather go down them?
That's a good question. I was getting beat to hell going down those sections, so I would say going up them, was a little less like I felt like I was going far slower than I should have been going down.
Yeah.
And then, going up these steep sections, even if you were to get off and walk the bike, you're probably still going the same speed. But I was getting absolutely I was getting passed by everybody if I lost my footing and had to unclip.
Yeah.
And it would take me so long to get back on the bike going down that, I felt a lot better climbing on those sections than I did descending. But we were talking about it. You spend all this time you usually, for the most part, it was like climbing into pave.
Yeah.
And then you're wiped out trying to stay upright. And then you're like, oh, I can't wait to be going down. But the going down is harder.
Yeah.
Because I remember one point, I hit something and I had my glasses, basically useless glasses on the first pave section or whatever, because I just sweated into them and I couldn't see anything. So I just put them on my helmet, hit one rock and my glasses were dangling off, but I'm going down this hill. These brand new glasses are dangling off my helmet. I'm like, I can't take my hands off the bar to get it back onto my face. But yeah, just wiped you out so much. You think that you get some sort of relaxation going down, but no recovery going down. You're just hammering your arms.
Yep.
And
up legs, the lactic acid. It's not like you're getting to even spin them or shake them out a little bit as you descend. It's not recovery and descending. In a race like that or a route like that with those metrics is you're up or you're down. There was hardly any flat sections. And people, if most of our listeners or viewers are from the southern New England area, this was a true off-road race. There were 3 or 4 sections of pavement, maybe 3 to 5 miles of pavement in the full 55 miles. But actually, there's no way in hell there were 5 miles of pavement. It had to have been much less.
I think that ending part, there was 3 miles before the end there. That was probably 1 mile. And then there was that steep downhill pavement. And then there was the section at the beginning. So I doubt that there was even 4 miles of pavement along that whole thing.
Right. So the fatigue is very different than just any sort of pavement. And it's tough. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
Well, even on the recovery day, the next day, we're talking about how these dirt roads are basically pavement roads because they've been packed down so often. They're not Rhode Island gravel roads. It's it might as well be pavement at that point. Even when me and Brian were running the other day from his mom's house, we're running up these hills, and usually on dirt roads, it kind of takes the pounding away from slamming your feet on the ground. But it felt like running on pavement road. So I would say even though there wasn't much pavement, it was we were on paved roads at most point.
Yeah, they're so well maintained, and it's I want to say it's 80% of the roads in Vermont are gravel roads, but it's not, like you said, it's not a fire access road that you have around here. It's this there must be rebar underneath it, and then they have this sort of clay stone mixture, and they maintain them really well. There were some of the worst floods ever in Vermont just over a month ago, and the course had to be rerouted just a bit. We ended up going through on the recovery ride the next day. We went through this one section that it was road closed ahead. And when you're on your gravel bike, you're sort of just fuck that. I'm just going to keep going because you're not a car. And luckily it worked out for us because they do such a good job at maintaining those. And I'm not talking the class 4 sections because those are unmaintained, right? But these maintained gravel roads are absolutely beautiful. They are better than a lot of the paved roads around here. Yeah.
Less potholes.
Yeah,
For
way
sure.
less potholes for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, how did you feel on the next day when we did that recovery ride? I mean, the metrics of that ride were still pretty gnarly. It was like 21 miles, 1,700 feet. I mean, we took it easy, but my legs were feeling pretty heavy that day.
Yeah, my legs definitely felt pretty heavy. I was cramping up pretty bad. I'm sure Brian was talking about all of his cramps, but I was
Yeah.
trying to just get comfortable with them and just deal with them that day.
Right.
But I definitely pushed my legs being cramped a little further than I probably should have.
Yeah.
And yeah, the next day I was definitely feeling that the aftermath of my legs cramping, like the under or my hamstrings were getting locked up, like climbing up hills, and I would stand up to try to unlock them, and it would just make it worse. But yeah, it was just a constant battle with cramps that day. So waking up the next day and just feeling like the whatever that would be, hopefully not nerve damage, but
Right. And then what about when you guys ran? How were your legs feeling that day? So that was like, 48 hours after the race, you guys went on a run. Adam and I headed back. But you guys are both training for the New York City Marathon. We didn't even talk about that, which I think is awesome. It's going to be like a huge feat for both of you. People should go, and I think we can share donation links too in the YouTube video and everything. But like, how did that feel when you were like, deciding to run 2 days after a big race?
Actually, I felt pretty good.
Cool.
I mean, I was a little tired waking up that morning, but stepping out the door and just like, we weren't going to treat it like we weren't going to go hard running. Sure. But it was kind of hilly, way hillier than I usually run. I usually run like from my house into the city, and I'll maybe hit like 150 feet on like a 6 mile run. And we did a 6 mile run and we hit 700 feet of elevation.
Wow.
And we just turned out his mom's like door, and we ran right up a hill that was 3.5 miles long.
Yeah. And
yeah, I mean, I felt pretty good. After that, my calves were a little messed up. Yeah. And I went for another run yesterday, which is 4 days after.
Right. Yep.
And my calves were like burning.
Really?
And I can understand why people that live in hillier areas are such like significantly stronger runners, cyclists, and everything, because like, man, it hurts.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's a different type of training running up hills. I mean,
sure.
we talk about hills all the time. I mean, but yeah, hill training is how you get strong for sure.
Yeah. And not that like riding on the flats or running on flats like means you're weak, right? But it is a different type of training. And, sometimes if you're thinking about like doing a flat ride, right, it's just like constant power. And so on a hilly ride, maybe you get the work and then you get the recovery if it's not some fucked up road sections that you're going down. But yeah, I mean, as someone that lived in a flatter area, but now I live in a hillier area, I feel like the hills have they give back a lot more than the flats give back, at least in terms of like training.
Yeah.
So when it comes to running, I was talking about this with Brian and Adam. What about there's like the Overland Trail Run, not the one that they do like in the spring, but the one that they do the day before the bike race. I'm pretty much convinced to do that mile run up a Scutney Mountain. Do you think you would do that next year?
Oh yeah, for sure. If I even thought about it, because I don't know, I just blanked on that. Sure. I would have been just in my running gear and like lining up at the start line, because I don't know, it just seems like it just adds to the weekend doing that like extra challenge. Definitely wouldn't have made my race the next day more enjoyable.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, I flew my drone up the mountain to see like people running over there. And yeah, it looks like a fun little activity.
I think it'd be fun. I think we should do it next year. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I'm surprised you want to do it.
Yeah, I want to do it. I think, I mean, I'd like to be a little bit more open-minded to trail running specifically. I don't know how much like running on the road I would do, but there's like trails right in my backyard that I could run on and stuff. And I do think there are benefits to running. I mean, even though like I just like love to ride my bike, and I wouldn't say I'm that much of a well-rounded individual when it comes to like my athleticism. I like to do a lot of yoga, but for me, it's just like bike, bike, bike. But you know, like talking to other members of It's Just a Hill that run, you and Brian, and then Cal's been running a little bit more because he's claiming it helps with his bone density. He's worried about his fragile bones. I do think there are benefits to it, and you know, it's just like working out different muscle groups, and it will benefit not only you on the bike, but it'll just like benefit you in the long run when it comes to like your fitness and your longevity. And yeah, I mean, I can convince myself to do a mile run in 12 months time. I think I can convince myself to do that. Yeah.
I think I mean, I was primarily a runner before I was a cyclist, and the biggest hurdle was the time thing running. Like if you run for an hour, it feels like a long time.
Yeah.
Especially if you're really working, like time seems to drag by. But I've noticed now that we're doing these longer bike rides, like longer distances are feeling easy. Like I just ran 10 miles last night at like a pretty like steady pace, and I ran for an hour and a half, and it felt like nothing because, you know, an hour and a half out the door on a bike is like the standard amount of time.
Sure.
So like the time thing is definitely like, you know, I'm benefiting, or running is being benefited by like me spending more time in like heart rate zones on a bike for that like extended amount of time.
Yeah. And it's silly, like as much as It's Just a Hill is very cycling centric, I think it's silly to just be like, it's bikes or nothing. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? You know, like it's good to be like a well-rounded individual in terms of your athletic prowess, or just in terms of like not just riding the bike, you know, like spend time with your family and friends, or just go like fucking sit on the beach or whatever during the summer, right? It's not just bikes. We're not professionals, you know, we all have day jobs, and like just about like, you know, having fun and experiencing new things. And if running up a Scutney is one of the things, like, oh fuck yeah, I'm into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to like derail the conversation about Overland, but I think the running community is like a great community to be part of. And it's just like, I don't know, like the cycling. I mean, I've probably done more cycling events now than I have done running events.
Yeah.
And just like it just feels so much more chill.
Yeah.
And like people are there to have like a good time. Not that people are not trying to have a good time at cycling events. But I feel like it's like more ego driven than it is like with running, because 100%. With running, it's like it's you versus you, and with cycling it's much more like you versus that guy in front of you, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, another good thing about being part of the running community is like, I mean, you can see like all the medals that I have there. That's I think 2 of those are from cycling, and the rest like every single run that you do, be a 2-mile run, they give you a medal.
Right.
And yeah, it's just like a fun little token that you get at the end.
Yeah, no, you're so right. I think one of the big reasons why I wanted to start It's Just a Hill was because the group rides I went to beforehand were so lame, because everyone is just like such a hardo and is so focused on just like, I'm going to get a good workout, I'm going to drop everyone else. Like, no, it's not about dropping everyone else, you know, especially if you're not racing and it's just like a casual Sunday group ride. Like, yeah, I mean, there are different types of people that are going to want to put in different efforts, even on a group ride. But like, it's not about just like showing up to a thing, strapping on your helmet, riding really hard for 3 hours or whatever, and then going home. But it's about like hanging out, meeting new people, getting like, you know, fun little things that you can throw up on your wall, because those medals look fucking dope right there. And like, right, we got one when we did the Sea to Key thing, like down in Florida. We did that 200-mile ride. But it seems like you're getting, you know, it just, and like, this isn't about like, people are going to be like the fucking participation trophies, you know, you're obviously going to get those type of people, but there's nothing wrong with like remembering that you accomplished something with like a cool medal and like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, hey, I did something and I pushed myself to do this thing and I feel accomplished for it. There's nothing wrong with like feeling accomplished. No one should be like dogging you out
because you got a medal for fucking running, you know? Like,
I love
cool.
trophies.
Yeah, give me all the participation trophies. I want to fucking hand me something the next time I walk into the grocery store because I'm shopping there, you know what I mean? Give me something free. I don't care. Yeah. There's a coupon. You participated in going to Stop and Shop today. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Anything else? Any other things that stand out to you about Ovrlnd that you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Yeah, so I think that Overland is great because it's like I know you had a conversation with the race director Ansel. I can appreciate the lifestyle event that he's trying to like create with Overland. Yeah. It's like you go up, you camp, you do, you know, that trail ride you can do the full race, or you could just like hang out, like there are families there. Yeah. And it's just like that Overland experience, and it's fun. It's like a festival almost. Yeah, and it is. Yeah. It's just a cool event to feel like you're a part of, you know? Yeah. And, you know, just going up and hanging out with friends, that's like most of the reason I think we decided to do it is because it's like, it's the race is one thing, but the hangs are like overall why we ride bikes together in the first place. For sure. But yeah, I thought it was a great event. It was much more organized this year. I think we can all agree on that. For sure. And yeah, I was toying with the idea of not doing it next year, but I mean, make the judgment call in January if we all want to do it again. I mean, I would love to.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think everyone know, and I've said it before on this episode of the podcast, but I was like, fuck this shit. I'm not doing this again. And then I have done a total 180 based on just like the experience that we had and the conversation that I had with Ansel. And just like you said, yes, it is expensive. You can't get around the fact that it is one of the most expensive things that we did for the year, but no one's expecting these events to be free and no one's forcing you to pay for them, right? Like we chose to sign up for them. We knew what the price tag was. And yeah, I mean, I think we all had a blast, and I am in the camp right now that, like, you know, unless there's something else going on that weekend or some financial issues or whatever, that like, hell yeah, I'm down to do Ovrlnd again. And you know, maybe there are more of us that go and camp out, and because that is so much fun. Like we sort of create this like little compound on the field that is Scuttney Outdoors, and you know, a lot of people, it seems like most people sort of camp alone or, you know, maybe with their families. But with us, there's like 4 of us, and like people walk by and they're like, hey, you guys look like you might have some tools or whatever. Or like, you know, we met Brian last year who like, you know, flew in from Puerto Rico, and like, I don't know, it's a lot of fun. You get to meet people and you sort of just like hand out It's Just a Hill stickers, and people talk to you about whatever. And then like, you know, the video that we have coming together, which will be out kind of soonish, just sort of is what it's all about. It's much more than just like this 4-hour, 5-hour race effort. And it is about like just hanging out with friends and meeting new people and like, you know, going to new places, right? We don't ride up there that often, even though it's not our first time up in Vermont, but like, yeah, it's just about like, it's the full thing. It's not just the race. And I think they do a really good job at that.
Yeah, 100%. I love all the different avenues of cycling and just like experiencing different lifestyles and kind of being a part of that. It's just like it just makes cycling more interesting rather than just like doing group rides all the time. Yeah. And I mean, I would encourage anybody that's interested in doing something like that to try it out, you know?
Right. Yeah, and the camping part too, like we've talked about the camping there, and hopefully, you know, we do some other events with more camping. I think it just makes it more of like a fun weekend instead of just like you know, strapping on your shoes and your helmet and getting to it. So
yeah, I also couldn't imagine just leaving after that race because
I know.
But not even being tired, just being like caked in mud. Even if you get a chance to wash yourself off, like I didn't feel clean until I took a shower like 3 days later.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there was still, I mean, even though we were like bathing in baby wipes and like face cloths with water on them, it's just not the same. And so, yeah, maybe some upgrades. Maybe we have a shower next year. And
but that's what it's all about, learning and growing and like learning from the experience that we had, and like, maybe a better race next year, maybe better camping next year, all of the above. Or at least hopefully a better race for myself. But yeah, shit happens. What are you going to do? It was still fun. And like, not to sound too corny, but like the fucking memories, right? Like the photos that we took, the videos that we have coming out, and like you fucking watching Seinfeld, like every time I would hear like the laugh track, I would just laugh. Like, it's not like you had your iPad up loud, but my tent was sort of like right next to your truck. So I wasn't hearing all of the things, but then all of a sudden I'd hear one little bit, like as a big Seinfeld fan myself, and I'd be like, that is fucking funny. Seinfeld fucking rules. Like, it was just so good. Yeah. So
yeah, man.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks a lot, dude. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And yeah, here's to Ovrlnd 2023. See you on the trail run 2024. All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thanks, dude.
All right. Peace.
Later. Well, that's all she wrote. That's pretty much all we have to say about the 2023 Vermont Overland. Thanks again to Ansel, to Brian, to Adam, and to Jeremy for sitting down and talking about the event this year. Sure, it might not have gone exactly how I planned, but I did have fun, and the whole camping experience over the weekend is really like, puts the icing on the cake, if you will. It's good to have a good race, and it's, you sort of ramp up for it, even if you're talking like a year coming off the last year's race, and then, 365 days later, 364 days later or whatever. But, it's also a race that you sign up for in January, and it does sell out relatively quickly. So the anticipation is real, and I am feeling pretty good about the way that I dealt with the adversity that, sort of fucked up my race day. But hey, that's okay. I had a great training ride, had a great weekend with my friends, ended up, sort of patching things over with Ansel, and patching things over in my regard, just because I was the ass and he was nothing but, I would say, gracious, and was willing to talk to me on Instagram when I was criticizing the race before we went up there that weekend. And, luckily, sort of happenstance with the GoPro being found and me reaching out on Instagram about me losing the GoPro, and like literally within an hour that from the post that I was like, hey, I lost my GoPro at Ovrlnd on Sunday morning, to the time that it was handed over to Brian was probably like an hour or two. It was just absolutely wild. It makes me believe in the spirit of gravel, and having a lot of fun with your friends is really what it's all about. Like, we're not bike racers. We all have full-time jobs, daytime day jobs. My job isn't necessarily full-time. It's not like I'm working 40 hours a week, but I'm putting on this. I'm doing It's Just a Hill stuff too. Okay. People are complicated. Don't judge people just based on their jobs. It's bullshit. Judge people based on the content of their character. Okay. And like I like to say, don't judge a bike by its bar tape. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Shout out to everyone that was on the podcast, and a special shout out to BSP, my sort of partner in crime, if you will, does all the editing and mixing of all these podcasts. He's listening to this back right now, and hopefully he has a nice, cute little smile on his face as I shout him out. So thanks again, Brian. You're, truly a local legend, if we want to use Strava terms, in my eyes, and appreciate you, and appreciate all of you for listening and watching. And if you're listening on like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, please leave us a rating or review. If you're watching on YouTube, fucking smash that thumbs up, subscribe, head over to www.itsjustahill.com. We do have a free SEP shirt up for sale right now. Sepp Kuss, who, is what I think is maybe the most mountain domestique, the best mountain domestique of all time. He rides for Jumbo-Visma. I don't want people to think that, like, I want him to be freed from Jumbo, because I think he's great on Jumbo, but just, like, let him spread his wings and fly a little bit. Let the Durango Eagle fly and win some stages. I feel like he probably, this isn't like a Vuelta race recap, but maybe he could have won that stage 3 of the Vuelta. He was looking pretty good, and I would love to see Sepp get some stage wins, and you can buy a shirt if you feel the same. It says free Sepp when it's Sepp behind bars, and if you happen to know where Sepp lives in Andorra, Spain, let me know, because I will send him a t-shirt. That being said, keep an eye on our website, on our Strava for events coming up. We do have our Cranksgiving is on the calendar. I believe that is November 19th. I don't have it up in front of me. Stand by, looking at my computer, searching. There is a group ride this weekend. Sunday, September 3rd, and Cranksgiving is scheduled for November 19th. If you're not familiar with Cranksgiving, we did this for the first time last year with the Coffee S Cycling Maybe folks. They will be joining us again this year, and we will have like different raffle prizes, and all you got to do is donate some food, come and do the ride, some non-perishable items. More details will be out, but for right now, save the date. Cranksgiving 2024, November 19th. Check it out on Strava. Look at us on Facebook, Instagram, whatever the hell you can. And thank you for the support. Thank you for listening, watching, and yeah, thanks for being you. Ride for the fun of it, baby. Woo!
Decaf left, regular right. Decaf left, regular right. It's very challenging work.